Please rise for his word before the mayor.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. I've got quite a long preamble because this is going to be a complex meeting to manage. So I'll firstly explain the process that we're going to follow. In order to keep members and officers safe, there will be limited numbers seating in the council chamber. These members will be seen on screen and can hear everything that is being said in the council chamber. They will also be able to take part in any discussion. When any vote is undertaken, those members will come into the council chamber one at a time to state how they wish to vote on a particular item. And I would appreciate that those in the David Kitts room, if they could do that on a very timely way. They will also, so we can get through the business. All other members have been invited to join the meeting via Teams. These members can take part in any discussions, but are not entitled to propose, second, or vote on any of the items. As advised previously, all members, except those who have a medical exemption, are expected to wear a face mask whilst in the council chamber and any other rooms in Shoot End, and these may only be removed when speaking. Could I please ask you to ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off? If you are participating via Teams, when you are not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphones. If you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, could everyone participating via Teams turn off their cameras and only turn them on when speaking, and also introduce themselves whenever they speak? To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, could members wishing to speak via Teams please use the hands up facility wherever possible, and please do not speak until asked to do so by myself. Could those members in the chamber please raise their hands whenever they wish to speak? Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. In order to make it easier for those watching the meeting, I am proposing that members do not need to stand when speaking. There's two more. Please note that to avoid the chat function on Microsoft Teams being used inappropriately, it has been disabled for this meeting. And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. Thank you. So do we have any apologies?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have two apologies, Tahir Maher and Bill Soane.
Thank you. Moving on to the minutes, agenda item 36. I'm going to ask for agreement to the minutes. Just before, I believe there's an amendment as well. Councillor Fishwick, would you like to introduce your amendment, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amendment to, or take this off actually, sounds a bit better. Amendment to minute 29, page 32, the agenda. The amendment is that Paul Fishwick stated that he felt that the action plan continues to encourage more car use, and instead it needed to include more improvements for walking and cycling. I hope everybody will accept that minor amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fishwick. I believe, Councillor Halsall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As this meeting is somewhat bizarre, and it's going to take a lot of time to vote, we're prepared to accept the amendment, but on the proviso that it is minuted that actually the amendment is, in my view, post facto rationalisation of what was said. But in the interest of the meeting proceeding, we will accept the amendment. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just clarify, you said in my view? Is that a view of you personally or your group?
It is the view of my group, sir.
Thank you. So with that comment, I'm going to ask if this is acceptable to only those members in the chamber to vote on this item, thus removing the potential delay. If anyone in David Hicks is unhappy with this proposal, could they please raise their hands or indicate via Madeline? Can't see anything going on in there. Okay. So therefore, I'm going to ask those in favour who are in the chamber, please show by raising your hand. That looks unanimous. Moving on to agenda item 37, any declarations of interest? Okay, we're just making a note. I'll start with Councillor Holson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm the non-executive director of Optilis.
Thank you. Councillor Kaiser?
Yes, I am also director of the housing company and the non-executive director of Optilis.
Councillor Munro?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also a non-executive director of the housing company.
And Councillor Eunice?
Same for me as well, non-executive director of the housing company.
Thank you. I think that's all. Councillor Smith, Wayne Smith.
Executive member of the holdings company.
Thank you. Can't see any others. So I'll move on to item 38. I just got three quick things I wish to announce. There are clear signs that the pandemic is easing. We've now to date, between myself and the Deputy Mayor, 30 events that we have been to, and they're coming in thick and fast at the moment. My second point is I want to thank the leaders, the 4 leaders of the parties and the groups for meeting me to discuss various of the functioning of this meeting. I can honestly say we had an open and frank discussion. The plan is there are a couple suggestions that have come out of that. I will put those together as suggestions and pass them to and to submit to the CRWG to consider them. So thank you. Okay, I've just been notified that there is someone in the David Hicks room who wishes to declare an interest. Can they do it? Oh, I can see. It's Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you. I'm a non-executive director of Loddon Homes, so I'd like to declare an interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jorgensen. And then that leads me on to my final. I'm going to do a bit of publicity. You've all got a flyer about the Mayor's Ball. I hope as many of you can come. Many of you will probably know the venue, the Cindersham Court. So I really would like to see you there. I'm also on the scrounge looking for presents or raffle prizes, auction prizes. I've already been promised a fully refurbished, warranted laptop. So I'm looking around. I'm sure most of you could probably beat that. So if you can pass that information on to either me directly or to Caroline Kelly, the Mayor's assistant. And that ends the Mayor's announcement. So we now move on to the public question time. The first one is Helen Palmer, who's going to ask her question virtually. Are you there, Helen?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. I've come on screen as well. Please will Wokingham Council declare its support for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. Drafted by scientists, legal experts, ecological economists and environmentalists, the CEE bill is designed specifically to reverse the climate and ecological breakdown we are facing. The bill requires the UK to take responsibility for its fair share of greenhouse gas emissions, to actively restore biodiverse habitats, and to stop damaging our natural world. through the production, transportation and disposal of the goods we consume. In this bill, the nature emergency is tackled shoulder to shoulder with the climate crisis via an urgent, joined-up, whole-of-government approach. Due for its second reading next month, the bill now has the support of 115 MPs across 8 political parties and 103 councils. Will Wokingham Borough become the 104th council to support the CEE bill?
Thank you for your question. Just before you answer it, Councillor Murray, can I remind all executive members that you have a maximum of 2 minutes, and I will cut you off if it's more. Councillor Murray.
Thank you for your question, Helen. The Council recognises that there is an intrinsic link between climate change and ecology, and through its Climate Emergency Action Plan, the Council has already set up targets that will help protect and support biodiversity in our borough. The Council has already established a strong track record for delivery of actions to address climate change and is currently strengthening the existing strategies, policies, action plans to deal with the effects of climate change. The Biodiversity Action Plan for Wokingham introduces natural climate solutions to combat land degradation and actions for improving the environmental quality, attractiveness and recreational potential of public spaces, rivers and waterways. Additionally, the Climate Emergency Action Plan establishes actions to improve grassland management, encourage wildflowering, hedge planting zones and committing to a major tree planting exercise. It is important to highlight that there are 2 pieces of legislation that will support addressing the climate crisis. The Agriculture Act of 2020 provides a range of powers to implement new approaches to farm payments and land management. In England, farmers will be paid to produce public goods, such as environmental or animal welfare improvements. The Environment Bill, which is currently at its 3rd reading stage in the House of Lords, brings about urgent and meaningful action to combat the environmental and climate crises we are facing and acts as a key vehicle for developing the bold vision set out in the 25-year Environment Plan. It will support the country's desire to build back better after COVID-19 with measures that support both economic growth and the government's manifesto. To support the Council's effort to address climate change and its effects, more support and guidance is needed from central government, as the Council's own statutory powers and responsibilities are limited in terms of what we're able to do in achieving net zero carbon. For this reason, we will await the vote on the Climate and Ecology Emergency Bill with interest and review the potential implications on the function of local government.
I'm
Our
sorry,
residents have
Councillor Murray,
resources.
you've run out of time. Thank you. Have you got a supplementary?
Just to ask whether you accept that Wokingham is part of the bigger picture and that the collapse of the ecosystem, which is imminent, will affect the whole world. I accept that you're doing local things and that's great, but I don't think that what the government is doing is anywhere near strong enough, and I do see no harm in supporting this much stronger bill. So the question is, do you agree?
I'm not in a position to comment on government policy. All I can talk about is what we're doing here in Wokingham, where I've already laid out. We're taking action to improve biodiversity. We're taking action to reduce our carbon footprint. We're taking action to address climate change within our borough. We will focus on biodiversity. We will improve biodiversity net gain across our borough, and we'll do it using the mechanisms that are available to us.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, and thank you, Mrs. Palmer, for your question. Philip Meadowcroft, I know you're in the chamber. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Will the leader of the council please describe in precise detail the council's declared policy and how it duly guides its members on the use of private emails rather than their official wokingham.gov.uk email addresses when communicating to any individual group, media or matters connected with a member's status as elected council?
Thank you very much, Philip, for your question. The Information Security and Acceptable Use of ICT Policy, which is an internal council policy for employees, not for members, sets out the standards expected regarding the use of ICT, which includes email use. An extract of the policy states emails sent when conducting council business become part of the council's corporate record, even if sent from private business or personal email accounts. Council email accounts must not be used to conduct personal business or to run a private business. All new staff and existing staff, at least every 2 years, are required to sign the acceptable use policy. Councillors may use private and other email addresses when conducting council business. For example, councillors are contacted by residents at non-Woking UK addresses, and for example, particularly when councillors are also town or parish councillors or an appointment to a charity or a community body. However, as stated earlier, such correspondence, as if it pertains to the Borough Council, forms part of the council's corporate record. Your question also gives me the opportunity to apologise for the arrangements tonight to you all and all our members and residents. The opposition has insisted that everyone from their group who wishes to vote can vote, and our public health advice insists that we cannot have more than in the chamber than we have. I believe the votes from a politically balanced chamber was much more appropriate and worked well last month. So with regret, every vote will be a named vote, as the Mayor has said. Consequently, it's unlikely we should progress with much on the agenda, and that's a shame. Thank you, Philip.
Mr. Medcroft, have you got a supplementary? Excuse me, Mr. Medcroft. Sorry, a technical hitch. Can you use your microphone, because no one on Teams would actually hear what you're saying. So everything you've said so far, unfortunately, hasn't been heard, and I haven't got the time to allow you to go back. But please continue.
It strikes me that it would be helpful to all members that the Constitution should prescribe clear rules on the use of private emails by members. Two examples of the current confusion are illustrated by the fact that you, Councillor Halsall, and Councillor Howe, and his predecessor, Councillor Pitts, have always signed off your district councillors column in the Wargrave News with your private email addresses. But since December last year, you've used your official wokingham.gov.uk addresses. Second example.
Mr. Medcroft, can you hurry up to your question, because this is turning into a speech and I don't allow councillors to do this. So please, can you get to the end? Thank you.
A second example is the use by some members of the word council in their private email addresses. I understand that Whitehall guidance states ministers should use Whitehall email addresses, and if they do not, should ensure that their copy private email and other communications concerning official business to their departments completed, so that a full record is preserved. The question: would this Westminster guidance on private email use be a good starting position for Wokingham to create a suitable set of rules? Will you, Councillor Halsall, give it your enthusiastic back?
The answer is no, and it's not a policy which can be addressed on the hoof like this. It is something which we will have to reply to you in a written answer. But thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Medcroft. I would appreciate if, now that you've finished with the question, if you would leave the chamber for safety reasons and COVID reasons. Thank you. The next question is Daniela Esposito. Going to ask the question virtually. Are you there?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. My question is, Wokingham Borough Council declared a climate emergency in 2019. Please could the council confirm that this declaration applied to both Wokingham Borough and to the council itself?
Thank you for your question. The short answer to your question is yes. The slightly longer answer to your question is the climate emergency declaration applies to both Wokingham Borough Council and to the borough. The Climate Emergency Action Plan sets out targets to decarbonise the council's operations, as well as to support our residents, businesses and other stakeholders to transition to a low carbon economy within our scope of influence. Over the last year, the council has progressed significantly in areas to deliver carbon reductions across the borough. For example, the Denton Pastures Activity Centre has been redesigned with eco-friendly features that make the building net carbon zero. The council is working with schools to improve the energy performance of their business through a retrofitting programme and to identify opportunities to introduce renewable energy generation schemes. The planning application for the new solar farm in Barkham has now been approved. The scheme is expected to generate enough energy to power over 7,000 homes, and the local plan is currently being updated to include policies that will help make new buildings across the borough more sustainable. Within the council, we are working on reducing our carbon footprint by improving the energy performance of buildings, installing electric vehicle charging points, promoting home working, reviewing our policies, promoting changes in behaviour, and finding innovative ways to support our community.
Thank you. Ms. Esposito, have you got a supplementary question? It needs to relate to the question or the answer you just had. Thank you.
Yes, so seeing as this is the case, thank you for the answer. Would you consider treating the declarations as two declarations for clarity of ease and monitoring of progress of each, the council and the borough more widely?
Being completely honest with you, it's not something that I've ever considered. We've always just wrapped the two things together. It has been intrinsic that the Climate Emergency Action Plan is both for Woking Borough Council and for Woking Borough and its residents. I can see no reason why we would split it out, but I can also see no reason why we wouldn't split it out for reporting purposes going forward. I will consult with the officers and we'll see if it's possible.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And the final question we have is Andy Croy, who's here. Can you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Keith, and good evening, Gregor. My question is about the changes in numbers relating to the Barkham and other solar farms. The Climate Emergency Action Plan of July 2020 included 4 proposed solar farms at an estimated combined cost of £18 million. It showed estimated carbon savings by the 4 farms as 5,112 tonnes of carbon each, but with a total of 25,560 tonnes of carbon saved. The Climate Emergency Action Plan of July 2021, the following year, still included 4 solar farms, but the Barkham farm by itself is now shown as costing 21 million. The cost of the remaining 3 farms was shown as to be confirmed. The plan showed 7,970 tonnes of carbon saved by Barkham, and in addition showed the 3 uncosted farms still saving 5,112 tonnes of carbon each. In effect, the plan showed over 15,000 tonnes of carbon saved, but for no cost. To summarise, the cost of the Barkham solar farm is more than 4 times the original estimate, which while the current Climate Emergency Action Plan includes carbon saving estimates for 3 farms for which there are no costs attached. Climate Emergency Action Plan is a living document. Given the extraordinarily inaccurate estimates as to the costs of solar farms and totally misleading accounting for carbon savings, how can residents trust the plan?
Councillor Murray.
Thank you for your question, Andy. It's good to see you in person again. As you know, the Council's declaration of a climate emergency and the associated action plan established a series of commitments to play as full a role as possible in achieving a carbon neutral Woking Borough by 2030. As it clearly states in the 2020 report, the action plan is a predictive tool that allows us to understand generally where we are heading and to implement new actions accordingly. Without this tool, we would not have a clear path on what the scale of the approach should be. The broad targets set within the Climate Emergency Action Plan allow us to understand the level of commitment that is required. However, as it is made clear in the plan, these targets and financial implications are best estimates based on the information that we had at the time. The £18 million recorded in the report published in July 2020 is the committed funding to initiate these projects, which, as we already mentioned, will be informed as we progress with the delivery of each project. Solar farms, as any other infrastructure project, are subject to location, site-specific and capacity requirements. All these factors will affect the cost of the project and are only known once the proper feasibility assessment are completed. Therefore, the real costs and carbon savings for each farm can only be confirmed once the necessary studies are finished. The solar farm at Barkham will be funded through prudential borrowing. As the detail of the Barkham project has evolved, the financial appraisals has been developed using expert advice on cost and performance. Importantly, after taking into account the delivery, running and capital financing costs of the project, the appraisal is still forecasting a healthy return to the council over the lifetime of the installation. It is envisaged that other solar farms will be delivered on a similar basis, and there's no evidence at the time to suggest that they will not demonstrate a similar return on investment to the council when they are brought forward. The access to funding for these other solar farms, therefore, is not considered to be a barrier to delivery, and residents may
I'm
therefore...
sorry, Councillor Murray, you've run out of time again.
Oh,
I'm sure you could send Mr.
I
Croy the full
certainly will.
details. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Croy, for your, oh no, your supplementary. I'm sure there is one.
Thank you, Gregor. And I have to admit, I do feel a little bit sorry for you. I appreciate there's a lot of detail to keep track of in the plan, and it is very difficult to keep your eye on all the parts. But this is at least an 80 million gap that, to my knowledge, has not been publicly discussed to date. I'm sure that you and every councillor will be dismayed at the magnitude of this problem. I do not know if this is a transparency issue, a lack of attention to detail, or what it is. So my question to you is this: in the light of this issue, do you think you have the commitment to transparency, the attention to detail, or the competence to properly discharge the delegated authority requested for you in relation to the Barkham Farm project?
I think that the solar farm in Barkham stands up as an economic investment. With the fuel prices the way that they are at the moment, we've put in conservative estimates that will show that even after paying down the loan and the interest on the loan in building the solar farm, we will generate approximately £400,000 a year in profit for the council that we can then invest into other climate emergency initiatives or other initiatives that residents want us to. With the energy prices the way that they are at the moment, that conservative estimate is only going to be going upwards. So we will be making an even greater return on that investment. And I've been told yesterday that the equipment cost that has been factored into the budget for this project still holds true at the moment. And so actually we'll be producing it at the same cost and making more back as a result. So personally, I think it's a great investment. And if it was my money, I would still do it.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, and thank you, Mr. Croy, for your questions. Right, I think that's the last of the public question times. We're now moving to agenda item 40, petitions. Are there any petitions, please?
Yes, sir. If I could just do a short preamble. Robert Piggott Infant and Junior School have been in discussion with Woking Borough since 2008 to start a new project for one school, one site. Ossos proposes to merge the two schools to one single site in the village of Wargrave. For a number of reasons, this has not progressed. During this time, the current buildings have deteriorated and need repair. Both schools are in desperate need of modernisation to meet the educational needs of the children. We need investment, it says. We, the undersigned petition, ask Woking Borough Council to invest in the future Robert Piggott Infant and Junior School, either through one school, one site project to relocate the school in the village of Wargrave, or investment in the existing buildings at both the infant and junior school to make them fit for outstanding education of the children in our local community. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Helsel. If you can pass the petition on to Anne, she'll make sure it gets to the right people. Thank you. So we're now moving into the items which we will be discussing and debating. I'm just going to give you a little preamble. We've actually got three sources of potential questions and comments. We have councillors who are not here. They're on Teams. We have councillors who aren't in the chamber, which are in the David Hicks room. And then we also have yourselves here in the chamber. What I'm going to do is on each discussion item, I will canvass firstly Teams for any questions, then David Hicks, and then the chamber. That will then give us a master list, which we will then proceed to go through. So the first item, item 41, we've got 30 minutes on this, the tenants charter. I understand T-Baz is here, or is he on Teams?
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
I'm here.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
So he's not doing a presentation, but he will be ready to answer any questions that you may have. So first of all, do we have a proposer for this, please? Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose it. Thank you. And a seconder? All right. Proposer, you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Steve.
John.
We truly value and our relationship that we have with our social tenants, and this is a charter that was drawn up just over a year ago, and we've had an extraordinary year, as you can probably imagine, with COVID. So it was decided that we would actually review this and bring it forward again tonight. This is driven by our tenant involvement group. It's across. It is a cross party group, and I would have asked one of the other members from another party to second it if they've been in the chamber. Unfortunately, they're not. I think it's very important to understand that this is driven by the tenants and also legislation, because legislation is constantly changing with regards. We've seen things such as Grenfell, and that in itself becomes a catalyst for change. Basically, the 10 main important parts to this is tackling the stigma associated with being a council tenant. We're doing that as a council very much by building council homes which are invisible. That means that it doesn't mean they don't exist, but it means that when you visit a development or an area where we're building homes, there is no difference between council homes and what would be called private homes. To identify any future patterns of residents' needs and demands, to maximise the accessibility of the council services, modernising tenant engagement techniques to increase active involvement, create an easy, friction-free customer experience for tenants, giving tenants a greater choice on who does what repairs and when, responding to an ageing tenant population, helping tenants manage their personal finances more effectively, greater transparency regarding tenants' health and social health and safety inspection results, and developing a protocol for analysing and protecting the data that we get from tenants. One last thing that we will be looking at is allocations policy. It's very important that we get correct allocation policy for many reasons. One not being that residents get first served in the borough. We do build around about 300 affordable homes a year. At least 40% of those are social homes, although they don't sit with us, but they actually sit with housing associations. No doubt they still go to the poorest in the borough. And I'm happy to propose this report and would ask for your support. It's there.
Thank you, Councillor Kaiser. Who's seconding this? Thank you, Councillor Halsall. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
The administration, the council, and we as a Conservative group are very proud of the fact that we still manage our own housing stock and are adding to it. We have refurbished or rebuilt the vast majority of homes. Our rents are very competitive and our homes are very much sought after. Steve and the tenant and landlord improvement panel have done much to guide us over the years, and we are very grateful. Modernising the tenant customer experience in Woking Borough Council, a tenant charter, is timely in that it addresses the lessons of Grenville, the Green Paper of 2018, digital transformation and other social trends. I'm very happy to second this initiative and the aspirations around it, particularly at this time when we are addressing climate change. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? I'm going to go to Teams first. Is there anybody on Teams? Don't think so. David Hicks, anybody wishes to speak on this? Can't see anybody doing that. And then in the chamber, Councillor Ferris, anybody else? So Councillor Ferris, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I just want to say our group fully supports the Tenants Charter, and we are happy for this to go through without a recorded vote because we think this is a very good and excellent report.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. I appreciate that. So on that basis, I'm just going to call for a vote for the people in the chamber, which means we don't have a recorded vote. So all those in favour, please show by raising your hand. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Finally, does anyone have any questions for Steve? And then, no, anything in David Hicks? No. Right. Thank you, Steve, for all the good work. Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Kaiser.
If I just may ask a question of Steve. Steve, how do you think we fared during COVID?
Yes, we've done very well. Our rent levels are, we've got the lowest debt at the moment. We're at £414,000 worth of debt, which it shows that the tenants in Wokingham, no matter what they're going through, are still trying to pay their rent, which is a good thing. And we're doing very well. We could always do better, as you know, John. But yeah, overall, I think we're doing very well. The tenants are quite happy. As I say, we could improve, but we'll look to do that with the next charter. We'll bring it back next year. Hopefully with the adjustments, we want to review it, look at it, bring it back and see whether you agree with what we're going to take forward next year. So I wish to thank the council for the support. I'd like to thank TLIP for the Tenant and Landlord Improvement Panel for all their support. It's non-political. We get through a lot of work. So, and more than that, I'd like to thank the involved tenants. There's only 20 of us. And since the pandemic started in 2020, we've put in 3,503 hours in total in voluntary work. So we're holding our end up. And over that, I would like to say thanks to the tenant involvement team and especially to Kim, Roz, and also a very big thank you to Simon Price. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for going on so much. I know you've got a busy evening.
Thank you, Steve. And can you please take my thanks for all the work that you and your team do on behalf of tenants. It's invaluable work, and please keep doing it. Thank you.
Very much appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Right, so we move on to agenda item 42. Again, I shall do teams, David Hicks, and then the chamber when we come to debating this. So is there a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would you like to move the report, please?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Laura Blumenthal will be seconding this report for me.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, when this council declared a climate emergency in July 2019, it was clear from the outset that to reach our aims, we would have to make some difficult decisions and implement some bold interventions. The proposal we are discussing tonight is one such intervention. Our climate emergency action plan includes an objective to deliver 4 solar farms with the potential of generating in excess of 20 megawatt hours of electricity. To achieve this, we've looked across all of our larger land holdings, and this application is the first of our solar farm proposals to be brought forward. The current energy use of Woking Borough Council is approximately 37 megawatt hours per annum. The projected peak output of this solar farm is 29.6 megawatts. This solar farm would therefore make a significant step towards offsetting the council's own carbon emissions and would also significantly reduce the borough's carbon footprint. But the environmental benefit of this application isn't just about green energy. Almost 11,000 trees will be planted as part of this application, with further landscaping and planting across the development, as well as to support hedgerows and rewild the land under the panels. A new greenway running north to south across the site will link the existing public rights of way. Grassland enhancement, woodland creation and hedgerow improvements and planting is anticipated to provide significant biodiversity net gain. There will also be local labour opportunities available as part of the construction, and all of these elements combined will also play an important part in the delivery of our climate emergency action plan. As part of an extensive pre-application consultation, Woking Borough Council have sought to consider and respond to the comments raised, identifying and resolving issues where possible. Council officers have met with the parish councils to explain the scheme and understand their key concerns and issues. Conversations have also been ongoing with the farmer about how the council may accommodate his continued occupation of the site, including the farmhouse. The consultation culminated in a number of amendments to the project, which are included in the plans for the solar farm. Amendments have been made to lessen the impact on nearby heritage sites, to improve the public rights of way, and also for the farmer to improve access to his retained land. As a result, we believe we've acted positively and reasonably to the comments received and feel we are presenting a proposal here to this council that they may get behind and support. This development is not without its impact. The impact to the landscape views, heritage assets, and alternative land uses are all outlined as part of the original planning application. I want to be very clear here. All of these impacts are both temporary and reversible. More importantly, set against the positive effect on our carbon footprint and the broader environmental good, the benefits outweigh the impacts. Many residents have contacted me to say that we should be looking to build our solar farms on brownfield sites before we consider using agricultural land. But as the executive member for planning frequently reminds me, we do not have an abundant supply of brownfield sites in our borough. Although if anyone does know of any, I'm sure that both Councillor Smith and I would be very happy to hear about them. To achieve our carbon aims, we have to be bold. Building this solar farm is a bold initiative that will significantly reduce our carbon footprint. Having considered the paper presented, I hope all members will vote to approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. The second, Councillor Blumenthal, do you want to speak now or reserve the right?
I'll reserve my right.
Okay, thank you. So I'm now going to ask if anyone else wishes to speak. First of all, on Teams. Is there anybody there? I don't see anybody. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we have an amendment.
Right. Hang on a second. Okay. Would you like to propose the amendment, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We've been asked to do 4 things tonight under this agenda item. Approve commencement of this solar farm, approve the spending of over £20 million of borrowed money, note the estimated net income, and approve the delegation of decision making that would allow 2 individuals to make decisions that could more than halve that income. We're asked to do all of that with not enough information in front of us to form a business case. We are very much in favour of the principle of generating renewable energy. It is essential that we move away from burning fossil fuels, and if you've been following the news recently, you'll know that there is an energy crisis at present. We are a net importer of gas, and the wholesale prices have escalated to a point that has sent the industry into meltdown. And whilst we're not the only country with these issues, things are substantially worse for us here in Britain due to Brexit. We will very sadly see many more households plunge into fuel poverty as a result. Just because we are pro-renewable energy, though, does not mean we should be making decisions of this magnitude without thorough scrutiny. It would be fiscally irresponsible for any member of this council chamber to give the green light when there are so many questions hanging in the air. Where are the decommissioning costs in the plan? How long is the value per unit of electricity exported guaranteed for? What other price sensitivities are there? Why does the report we have tonight state that this will offset over 11,000 tonnes of CO2 per annum, yet the Climate Emergency Action Plan states 6,325 on page 42, 7,970 on page 43, and the planning application says 3,680? Why are we being told it is the only possible site for this solar farm, yet 3 other solar farms are planned in the future? As you can see, members in this chamber are being asked to approve this without scrutiny. It would be irresponsible of us to do so until that scrutiny has taken place. We still don't know if the Secretary of State will call in the planning application for this as it departs from planning policy. Sending it to scrutiny is the right thing to do. I'd also like to take the opportunity to remind members about motion 5 on the agenda tonight, supporting the local electricity bill. This legislation is paramount if we are to meet the energy demands of this nation without the need for fossil fuels, and will go a long way to provide the stability in energy supply and demand that is failing right now. We are unfortunately set to celebrate the first birthday of this motion soon, as it's been on the agenda since November 2020. The stagnation of the democratic process here in Wokingham means we are not getting to debate important motions. So I'm asking all councillors to support the amendment in front of you, and let's get through the motions tonight for the sake of the community we represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
I do. It's Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
Right. I assume this is the time when the amendment is circulated. They've already got it. Okay. So, Councillor Shepherd-Debay, Do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I will reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. So we will now have a debate on it. So I'll look at the teams first. If there's anyone want to speak there, no. David Hicksroom, anybody wishes to speak on the amendment? I can see at least one hand. Okay, and in the chamber, please. Can you keep your hands up? So I'm going to go to Councillor Burgess in David Hicksroom first, please. Sorry, Councillor.
Hello, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quite rightly, reducing CO2 emissions is a priority for the council, and solar power is certainly a good way of achieving significant reductions. But could the same reductions be achieved without blighting a beautiful part of our borough for the next 25 years? Could the same reductions be achieved while also directly benefiting our residents? We simply don't know, because the business case for solar farms has not come before overview and scrutiny, and we have no idea what alternatives have been considered and discounted. The borough has 2,600 council-owned homes. Why not bring forward the plan to add solar and other energy-saving measures to these homes? This would not only reduce the council's carbon footprint, but could also take many of our less well-off residents out of fuel poverty, and furthermore, would not involve appropriation of prime agricultural land. In my ward, I have 2 industrial estates with enormous warehouses and a business park with large office blocks. Some have roofs the size of a football pitch. Why not work with business owners to install panels on these buildings? The buildings could get free electricity, or the businesses rather could get free electricity. The council gets income from feeding the surplus to the grid, and the panels are installed in a brownfield site rather than a green one. We are being asked to borrow £20 million for a project without knowing whether the council's carbon reduction ambitions could be achieved by spending the same money in a different and potentially more beneficial way for residents and businesses. Until this has been thoroughly through scrutiny, I simply cannot vote for it, and I support this motion, the amendment rather.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to remind members that it was my amendment that was accepted when we declared a climate emergency in 2019. As I shall be leaving the council next May, I suspect that it'll be one of the achievements I'm proudest of here, even if what has happened with the climate emergency plan subsequently turns out to not be a matter for pride. This scheme came up at planning committee the other week, and I spoke in favour of the application and was very pleased to vote for it. I have a member questioning tonight on this solar farm, and I may withdraw it if the answers are forthcoming in this debate. So it may save time if I speak about that now. That question is specifically about the failure of this solar farm to achieve its planned carbon reductions. The climate emergency plan states it should save 197,500 tonnes of carbon over 25 years. Yet when it was approved at planning committee the other week, it was reported saving just 92,000 tonnes, over 100,000 tonnes less than the target. That figure is actually not correct either, as it refers to the original proposal, which had more solar panels. So the actual carbon savings will be even less than this. And the point of mentioning that is that most of our climate emergency plan is fantasy, wishful thinking, and greenwash. But this target, this solar farm, is one of the very few in our climate plan that is specifically measurable and should have been achievable. And if this flagship project of carbon reductions in the climate emergency plan can't even be remotely believed or achieved, why should we trust any of the other figures in that plan or indeed here? I mean, point 2 of this recommendation delegates responsibility of final decisions around this scheme, including funding costs, to the exec member for our disastrous, ineffective, inaccurate and unacceptable climate plan. And that's really difficult to accept. I know that our finance officer is pretty good with his sums, but I'd recommend they keep the exec member away from their calculator if they want this to add up. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the Labour Group supports this amendment. The fact that a decision of this magnitude is being proposed for approval tonight without proper scrutiny without any sight of a business case, and it even asks us to delegate responsibility to just 2 people, is quite honestly quite astounding. So we support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Councillor, I can't see any other. I'm doing a scan. Any other people wishing to speak in David Hicks or on Teams? Otherwise, we'll move to the seconder of the motion. Oh, there's one more. Gregor, you do get the right of reply.
I thought I was also given the right to decide whether or not I accepted the amendment.
You probably were, but I apologise. It's not my crib sheet.
I don't. I can give you a reason why if you want, or I can wait until later.
Do you mind waiting till later? And I do apologise. Right, so I don't see there's any other people who wish to speak, so we'll move to the seconder of the amendment, Councillor Shepherd-Debay.
Good evening. From hearing what everybody's spoken about this evening, essentially we have allocated over £20 million worth of public money to this project. This is a lot of money just to be handed over to the officer to manage to 2 people. Is it really acceptable for this amount of money to be spent without being able to at least ask questions of our officers and experts? Nowhere is the plan for this solar farm being examined or questioned by any of our committee. Is this really honestly a fiscally responsible thing to do? While in principle, we certainly support the use of solar energy and we want to see our solar farms put in good places, we still need to ensure that this is a good decision making backing up this up. And at the moment that is in doubt. And the plans that stack up the business case are also in doubt. I'm afraid that this report gives painfully little information to reassure us. So will there be an opportunity to ask the experts mentioned about the plans? Will it include the cost for removal from the farm, the restoration of the land after 25 years? How much has been allocated for its maintenance? These things we cannot see. We can see that there is a maintenance plan, but we can't see exactly what it is. How has the income been calculated? How will it be monitored and reported back to council? It may still be the right thing to do, even if the expected income turns out to be not what we expect. But please give all the councillors the ability to be that critical friend on this project. Council, please can we have this proposal sent to our one of our scrutiny committees to give all of the council a chance to ask questions and be sure that we do understand how our residents want our money how our residents' money is to be best put to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd-Debay. Councillor Murray, you have the right of reply on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of points. Overview and scrutiny is not a decision-making body. It's not in our constitution. The planning application has been approved by the planning committee. The proposal, including a full business case, including costings, including how it's going to be maintained, was approved by the executive on the 29th of July this year. All councillors had the opportunity to come along and ask questions if they wanted to, and yet nobody did. This isn't in line with our constitution, Mr. Mayor, and so I'm not accepting this amendment to the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. So we'll now go to the recorded vote, and I'll hand over to Susan to manage it.
Okay, I'll read out the names. Sam Akhtar.
Okay. If your name is called and you're in David Hicks, please can you move in? And please keep socially distanced. As this is coming on, I've been asked to clarify, this is a vote on the amendment, not on the substantive motion as it stands. Thank you.
Sam Akhtar. For, against, or abstention.
Yeah, sorry. Against.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Harry Bath.
Against.
Rachel Bishop-Firth. For. Laura Blumenthal.
Against.
Chris Bowring.
Against.
Shirley Boyd.
For.
Prue Bray. 4. Rachel Burgess.
4.
Anne Chadwick. Stephen Conway. Stephen Conway.
I'm 4.
Phil Cunnington.
Against.
Peter Dennis.
4.
Carl Duran.
4.
Lindsay Ferris.
4.
Michael Firmiger.
Against.
Paul Fishwick.
4.
Maria G.
4.
Guy Granderson. John Hawthorne. David Hare.
4.
Pauline Hallier-Simon.
Can you please use the microphone so that other people can hear?
Apologies, I thought it was still on. I'm against.
Graham Howe.
Against.
Clive Jones.
4.
Pauline Jorgensen.
Again. I think you've missed Norman out.
So it's next. Norman Jorgensen.
Again.
John Kaiser.
Against.
Sarah Kerr.
4.
Abdul Lloyd.
Against.
Morag Melbourne.
4.
Charles McGetts.
Against.
Rebecca McGetts.
Against.
Adrian Madden.
4.
Andrew Mickelburn.
4.
Stuart Monroe.
Against.
Gregor Murray.
Against.
Barry Patman.
Against.
Jackie Rance.
Against.
Angus Ross.
Against.
Daniel Sargent.
Against.
Ian Shenton.
4.
Imogen Shepherd de Bay.
4.
Rochelle Shepherd de Bay.
4.
Caroline Smith.
4.
Chris Smith.
Against.
Wayne Smith.
Against.
Alison Swaddle.
Against.
Shahid Yunus.
Against.
But the amendment's lost.
Thank you very much. The amendment unfortunately is lost. So we move back to the original motion and we can continue the debate. I'll just remind everybody that we've got about 10 minutes left on this debate. So who would like to speak on the original motion? We'll do the chamber first, since Rachel put a hand up. Anybody in the David Hicks who wishes to speak? Can't see anybody. Or on Teams? I think it's just Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As its starting point, this report references the Climate Emergency Action Plan of January 2020. This plan stated there will be 5 solar farms costing £18 million. The update in July 2020 stated the same cost of 18 million, 5 farms with a carbon saving of 25 kilotons at 5 kilotons per solar farm. Scroll forward to today and we have 1 solar farm costing £20 million, more than we were originally told that 5 farms would cost. If that wasn't bad enough, both the plan in 2020 with a budget for 5 solar farms and the plan in 2021 with no budget for 4 of these solar farms both show the same carbon savings. We've been told this evening that we don't know the full costs of these other schemes, but that they will be on a similar basis. So I can only assume then that this will mean borrowing will be more like 100 million in total in order to fund all 5 farms, and not the 18 million we were originally told. This report, along with the latest action plans, makes no reference to that change whatsoever and the budgetary and borrowing implications of it. The cost of solar farms is effectively 5 times what we were previously told, without it being referenced or noted. It's not a detail. This is potentially a £100 million hole in the plan. The report states that the business case was considered by the Climate Emergency Funding Board. It does not say who is on this board and what they reviewed. Why has the financial business case not been made available to council? Even the executive only got to see an extract, just a spreadsheet model. Was there no discussion of the risks? Did the business case include a discussion of the risks? If not, why not? It's a transparency issue. With that in mind, are we really being asked to delegate more powers regarding this scheme? Why would we vote to delegate decisions of this scale to just 2 people when there's been so little transparency about these schemes up to now? If you look at the detail of these recommendations, we've been asked to delegate decisions that could as much as halve the annual income from this scheme. The financial model that forecasts this income seems to be dependent on the energy markets, and we're seeing right now just how volatile those markets can be. 25 years is a very long time. You can't base the efficacy of the calculations on the state of the market today, as we seemed to hear earlier. There's no guaranteed price for which we can sell electricity for 25 years, so these predictions could be meaningless and taxpayers could end up funding a shortfall. It's just not clear how we are hedging against this likely volatility. Councillor Murray seemed very confident in this investment, but if someone tells you that a way of making money is too good to be true, it probably isn't. This is yet another example of greenwash by the Conservatives. There's serious issues around transparency and serious issues on risk. We can't vote for this until our concerns have been addressed.
Thank you. We're running out of time. We've got 7 minutes left. So Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that were said earlier. Obviously, yes, planning did approve this. It was approved on planning grounds specifically, nothing more, nothing less. Yes, it did come to executive. We don't get to ask questions in the way we can in scrutiny. We have a very structured way of asking questions, and we didn't know it was on the agenda until it had been published when there were already questions on that agenda. So we haven't had the opportunity to actually ask the questions we would like answering, which is why we really wanted to go to scrutiny. So I just wanted to make that clear for the public who are watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was a member of the planning committee that approved the application. I asked some awkward questions about impact on the heritage assets, but I was satisfied in planning terms that this was acceptable. It met the planning criteria. However, there were lots of issues concerned with this application that we didn't have the opportunity to discuss in planning because they weren't relevant to the planning process. And I deeply regret that the ruling group has seen fit to just reject what is a very constructive amendment. It's not an attack on the scheme. It's an attempt to ensure financial responsibility in this council. Deeply regrettable that they chose to vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. Councillor Blumenthal, you reserve the right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Murray has already given us a long list of the positives that this solar farm can bring to the borough. So I can simply say, let's get on and deliver the solar farm that we promised to our residents in the Climate Emergency Action Plan. Now is the time to be bold, to reach our net zero carbon target by 2030. And the fact that this solar farm has potential to offset the total carbon emissions from this council's entire operational property portfolio really shows the impact. So let's get on with it and let's get the solar farm built.
Thank you, Councillor Blumenthal. Councillor Murray, you're right to reply and then we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to make a point around the energy prices because it's been raised a couple of times. When the business case for the solar farm was created, energy prices were actually wholesale at pretty much a low point. And as a result of that, the business case that has been built around this, the business case that generates about £400,000 a year in profit for the council after paying down the loan and the interest on top of it, That's based on very conservative numbers from a conservative group. The irony. Also, energy prices have skyrocketed. We've seen it in the last couple of weeks. Now, taking control of our energy supply in a volatile time, that's a good thing to do. Creating a business plan when energy prices are at an all-time low that still stacks up and makes the borough a profit, and then energy prices wholesale start rising, that will only benefit the borough. So, you know, if the business case stacked up when energy prices were low, they'll stack up even better when energy prices are high. And if there is volatility in the market, having supply of our own electricity that we can then use to provide to schools, for example, who don't have the budget to pay volatile energy prices, that can only be a good thing too.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. So I'll hand over to Susan to do the recorded vote. Yes, I'm just watching the David Hicks people are getting in line. So I think we need to.
Sam Akhtar. Yeah.
Always the first. Yeah. Do we have a desk with Sam just around the corner?
Sam Akhtar.
Councillor Akhtar, we're waiting for your vote. 4.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Harry Bath.
4.
Rachel Bishop-Firth.
Abstain.
Laura Blumenthal.
4.
Chris Bowring.
4.
Shirley Boyd.
Against.
Prue Bray.
Abstain.
Rachel Burgess.
Against.
Stephen Conway.
Abstain.
Phil Cunnington.
4.
Peter Dennis.
Abstain.
Carl Duran.
Against.
Lindsay Ferris.
Abstain.
Michael Firmager.
4.
Paul Fishwick.
Abstain.
Maria G.
Abstain.
John Holsall.
4.
David Hare.
Abstain.
Pauline Holly-Syme. 4. Graham Howe.
4.
Clive Jones.
Abstain.
Pauline Jorgensen.
4.
Norman Jorgensen.
4.
John Kaiser.
4.
Sarah.
Abstain.
4.
Murad Malvern. Charles McGetts.
4.
Rebecca McGetts.
4.
Adrian Mather.
Abstain.
Andrew Mickleby.
Abstain.
Stuart Monroe.
4.
Gregor Murray.
4.
Barry Patman. 4. Jackie Rance.
4.
Angus Ross.
4.
Daniel Sargent.
4.
Ian Shenty.
Abstain.
Imogen Shepherd-Bay.
Abstain.
Rochelle Shepherd-Bay.
Abstain.
Caroline Smith.
Abstain.
Chris Smith.
4.
Wayne Smith.
4.
Alison Swaddle.
4.
Shahid Yunus.
4.
Recommendations agreed.
So the recommendations have been approved. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 43, Treasury Management Outturn. Do we have a proposer for this? Councillor Kaiser, do we have a seconder? Daniel Sargent. Will the proposer please speak for 3 minutes?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is a document that I've asked to be presented on behalf of the Deputy Chief Executive, Graham Evers. Basically, it's a bit of housekeeping that we do quarterly, and then we do an outturn number, which we are predicting where we're going to be at the end of the year. The actual outturn report was presented to the Audit Committee and agreed there on the 15th September. All the approved indicators set out in the Treasury Management Strategy have been adhered to. The contents of the Table A, which is set out in the report, which shows the benefits per council tax B equivalent from the income generated less finance costs on all the borrowings to date, equate to £10.22 per Band D for 2020-21. This credit provides income to the council to invest in its priority service. The net benefit has increased from an estimated £7.20 benefit, which was estimated in the Treasury Measure report, which is significantly up on last year's, which was £6.4 per council taxpayer. The total external fund debt at the moment is 458 million, which reduces to 121 million after taking into account cash balances. That's net indebtedness. That means money that we are having to deposit with other people and the amount of money that we have in the loans ourselves. And although the council's taken the opportunity, which you would do at the moment, to borrow at low interest rates, 2020-21, the external debt is expected to reduce by 350 million by March 22 as a result of the repayment of legacy debts on maturity. The council's realised assets are £400 million, which is of which a percentage of personal assets which are worth £240 million. Basically, I'm recommending this report. As I say, it's a report from the Chief Financial Officer of the council, and I would like to recommend this to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kaiser. I'm just pausing briefly to see if there's any amendments. Otherwise, I'll go to the seconder. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I can speak now.
Please do.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very pleased to second the report tonight as the chairman of the Audit Committee. We met as a committee last week, debated this report and in the end voted to recommend it to the full council this week. The report was prepared by officers. Feedback. The report was prepared by officers and showed that WBC has managed treasury balances in a cost-effective way. It did the prudential indicators set out in our treasury management strategy and was also complied with the statutory requirements placed upon us. Both as a councillor and an accountant, I approve of the changes over time to the presentation of this annual report. It isn't a dense report full of tables that only those with professional training and a hell of a lot of time on their hands would understand. It's something that's well written and makes it much easier for our residents to understand how we're managing the public finances on their behalf. The recommendations on the agenda tonight provide an excellent summary of the key facts. Thank you to the officers for making this report and making the changes to the report I mentioned. I encourage all the councillors here tonight to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. So I'm now going to trawl to see who wishes to speak. I'll start off with Teams to see if there's anybody. Can't see anybody. And I'm going to move to David Hicks. Any wishes to speak on this in David Hicks? And I can't see anybody. And in the chamber.
Councillor G.
Okay, Councillor G. And we're just getting the names for in the chamber. We've got Councillor Shepherd today, Councillor Burgess. Anybody else here? All right. Councillor G, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Treasury Management Outturn report contains information that it shouldn't because it's supposed to be a backwards looking report. It doesn't contain information that we had last year, notably appendices A and B. But I am pleased to see that the report still puts us on track for gross debt or gross borrowing of 750 million by 2023-24. So in that, it's good in that it confirms the previous forecasts. So because it includes information that it shouldn't, and it doesn't have all the information that it should, I urge councillors to vote against this Treasury Management Outturn report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor G. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly reiterate that the definition of the net cost of borrowing presented in these reports keeps changing. There's no consistency. So this report reverted back to showing the cost of borrowing actually as income. The main mid-year report that we voted on in March actually showed the cost of borrowing as a cost of £7.52 per household. So here we're going back to a cost of borrowing that's actually income of £10.22 per household, which is obviously the cost of borrowing after it's been netted off with other income. If this was a proper KPI relating to debt and investments, it would be consistent over time, agreed at the outset and then measured. Instead, we appear to have a situation where the Conservatives can actually continue their practice of picking out figures that suit their position.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Shepherd-Bay.
Council, even before this report had been to the Audit Committee last week, it had appeared on this agenda as recommended by the Audit Committee. Clearly, this devalues the independence of the Audit Committee and makes a mockery out of this Council's process. So how close was it to not getting approved? Of the 6 Audit Committee members present, 3 voted for it and 3 voted against it. All 3 who voted for it were Conservative councillors who seem to just want the report to pass with minimum fuss. So what is wrong with this report? It is again remarkably different from previous reports, with several items being removed, such as the performance indicators that Maria mentioned. The removal of these items were not discussed or agreed by the Audit Committee, and as a result, the report is now even more difficult for a layman to read and understand. Have any of you tried it? I might also notice that the 458 million shown here is still money that has to be paid back. It does not magically disappear, even if you add the net indebtedness. This is not clear, especially as this is supposed to be only a retrospective report. We are not sure why some of these things are even in here. To sum it up, it seems that the report has been altered to suit a political agenda, not the practical and honest view that we really need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd-Bay. I'm going to do one further sweep before I pass back to the proposer. Anybody on the teams wishing to speak? Can't see anything. Nope. David Hicks, anybody else wishing to speak? Nope. Wonder if they're still awake. And anybody in the chamber wishing to speak? Otherwise, I'm going to pass to Councillor Kaiser to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said earlier on when I was talking about this, if you read the name, I'm just a piano player. I'm not writing a song or even singing a song. This has come from our chief executive. If the people on the opposition benches want to feel that they've got a problem with the competence of our chief financial officer, which is seen what they're challenging tonight, I would suggest that you take it up with him and SITFA and also our auditors. Thank you.
Thank you for that summing up. So I'm going to now move to the vote. So I'm going to just pause while David Hicks gets its line. I can't see them moving. We're moving to the vote. Come on, please. Come on, please. Right. I'm moving to the recorded vote.
Sam Akbar,
For.
Keith Baker,
Abstain.
Harry Bath,
For.
Rachel Bishop-Firth,
Against.
Laura Blumenthal,
For.
Chris Bowring,
For.
Shirley Boyd,
Abstain.
Prue Bray,
Against.
Rachel Berger,
Abstain.
Anne Chadwick, Stephen Conway,
Against.
Bill Cunnington,
For.
Peter Dennis,
Against.
Carl Duran,
Against.
Lindsay Ferris,
Against.
Michael Firmager,
For.
Paul Fishwick,
Against.
Maria G,
Against.
Guy Granderson,
For.
John Halsall,
For.
David Hare,
Against.
Pauline Hallier-Simons,
For.
Graham Howe,
For.
Clive Jones,
Against.
Pauline Jorgensen,
For.
Norman Jorgensen,
For.
John Kaiser,
For.
Sarah Kerr,
Against.
Abdul Lloyd,
For.
Maura Melvin,
Against.
Charles Maggett,
For.
Rebecca Maggett,
For.
Adrian Mather,
Against.
Andrew Mickleby,
Against.
Stuart Monroe,
For.
Gregor Murray,
For.
Barry Patman,
For.
Jackie Rance,
For.
Angus Roth,
For.
Daniel Sargent,
For.
Ian Shenton,
Against.
Imogen Shepherd-Debay,
Against.
Rochelle Shepherd-Debay,
Against.
Caroline Smith,
Against.
Chris Smith,
For.
Wayne Smith,
For.
Alison Swaddle,
For.
Shahid Yunus,
For.
recommendations agreed.
Thank you. So that's agreed. Thank you for everybody. Can I just reiterate the David Hicks room, please, when you know that the vote's coming up, if you can be a little bit quicker to get into queue, that will help us potentially get to some motions. Thank you. So we're now on to the members' question time. The first on the list is Councillor Bishop first. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you very much. Parents of school-aged children were pleased to see the law change on school uniform in April, when the Education Guidance About Cost of School Uniforms Act passed. The new law recognises that leaving school uniform decisions solely to governing bodies did not always work in the best interests of less well-off families, who were often left struggling to pay for school uniforms and basic equipment. We know that this is a real problem for lower-income families in Wokingham. Councillors are hearing about some very high basic uniform costs, and in addition to these, schools have IT requirements. State schools can require children to have, for example, an iPad brand tablet, and this is happening in Wokingham. The Department for Education will now be publishing guidance about the cost aspects of school uniform policies. Will the council commit to taking the proactive stance that other councils have done to support all state schools in the borough in adopting policies which mean that uniform and other education costs are kept truly affordable for all families?
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop Firth, for that question. Last academic year has been incredibly challenging for all children, parents, guardians and schools, including the staff. Wokingham has had some of the best performance in respect of maintaining schools opening and attendance from March 2020, when schools were asked to close to most students. We have continued to work with schools and academies throughout the pandemic on all aspects of Department of Education policy, providing guidance and support. This has included daily communication to all schools, senior leaders, key stakeholders, and bespoke responses where there have been issues or concerns relating to, obviously, the outbreaks and allied problems for children. We will continue to work closely with the Department of Education to fully inform our schools of understanding of the national policy. And yes, the council will take a proactive stance in adopting policies and support of children in need. I managed to do that in 2 minutes.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. I'm really glad that you've made that commitment to support families in need throughout the borough. Can you commit that you're going to be providing resources and giving councillors and parents opportunities to input into the discussion about how we can keep school uniform costs truly affordable?
Councillor Howe?
Thank you for that. There are various forums in which input can be made. I just would like to point out, by the way, that where we are joined at the hip with our schools is in SEND and admissions. 9 out of 10 of our senior schools are academies, and they determine their own rules. Over half of our 54 primary schools are academies, and the same applies. So we only have direct control as such over the maintained schools. We will do all we can through the schools forum and other channels.
Thank you. Can we move on to Councillor Jorgensen in David Hicks' room for your question, please?
Okay, thank you. It's a question to the Executive Member for Resident Services, Communication and Admissions. Could you provide an update on plans to put in place local deliberative processes that will bring our residents into the conversation on how we tackle climate change?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Jorgensen. The Climate Emergency Community Deliberative Processes report was approved by the Executive on the 29th of July 2021. The report provides an analysis of 15 diverse and wide-ranging community deliberative processes, information from industry experts, and benchmarking against several other local authorities' experiences. This analysis aims to inform the deliberative processes that will be undertaken to engage the community with our climate emergency agenda. Within this report, the Council made a commitment to develop a proposal for delivering these processes and to report back to the Executive in October 2021. This proposal will establish the financial implications, timelines and expected outcomes from the delivery of the process. Once budget is approved by the Executive, our aim is to start running these processes via an independent facilitation partner in early 2022. We hope that the ideas, suggestions and recommendations generated by the participants in these processes will help to improve our current action plan, close the gap to net zero and endorse the work already undertaken. The climate emergency is an urgent problem that needs to be tackled in a time-sensitive manner. Engaging and empowering residents and stakeholders to be part of the solution is a key stage of that way forward. Engagement with residents and stakeholders will continue to be an ongoing process and priority in the climate emergency agenda as set out in the action plan, which is a living document and constantly evolving.
Thank you. Councillor Jorgensen, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you. What process will be used to agree the actions and recommendations arising from these local deliberative processes, and how they'll be included in the Council's action plan going forward? Thank you.
That's a really good question. So the process that we've been discussing is that the results and recommendations from each of the local deliberative processes will be brought here to Council for all members to vote on whether or not Council officers should move to budget them and carbon budget them. So to go away, do the analysis, understand what the impact is likely to be on our carbon footprint and what the impact is likely to be on our finances, at which point recommendations will come back to Council to be approved by a vote of all councillors as to whether or not those actions should be adopted and included within our climate emergency action plan, whether they should be delayed for a later date or whether they should be rejected based on the recommendations of the officers. I want to be completely clear here. I want to make sure that all of the recommendations are put into the public domain. I want them to be openly discussed, and I want us to be able to agree going forward which actions we're going to take and include in the best interest of our community, and which ones we'll be passing on and why.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. The next person is Councillor Rance from David Hicks.
I was really pleased that the Planning Committee passed the application for Shinfield Studios in July. Could you tell me what conversations the council is having with the studios to ensure that there are local employment and skills development opportunities?
Councillor Munro.
Thank you for your question, Jackie. I agree that the planning permission granted for the studios in July is an exciting step in establishing Woking Borough as a prime location for the dynamic and growing film and television sector, with the prospect of significant further investment to come. As I'm sure you're aware, given your question, what is particularly exciting about the sector is the huge range of potential professions and trades that feature in the supply chain that offer significant scope to connect residents to employment and skills development opportunities. It is also anticipated this will be a long-term feature in the local economy and major stimulus of economic growth, so that the creation of opportunities to local people could be sustained for many years. In this context, the council is in current discussions with the studios, the university, resource productions to develop a model for maximising access to employment and skills opportunities for local people. Work has started on the concept of developing a Cine Link hub to facilitate productive relationships between Cine Valley companies, the university, the council, and a variety of stakeholders in the local community. The Cine Link hub would aim to remove barriers to entry to film and television industry jobs, diversify the workforce, and respond to the demand for talent, which I have heard could be as many in the thousands. The unique talent pipeline that can respond quickly to the incoming production companies utilising the studio space, noting that there isn't a single end user, but a number of production companies who will book chunks of studio time according to their needs. This proposal for a pilot partnership project led by the Resource Productions in conjunction with the University of Reading and Woking Borough Council. The project aims to trial approaches for raising career aspirations, delivering skills and training opportunities for Woking Borough residents, and assisting participants to get a foot on the ladder of film and television careers. The pilot will run from October this year to June 2022, with the aim of equipping residents with knowledge, skills, and contacts to
I'm
access.
sorry, Councillor Councillor Munro, you've run out of time. Councillor Rance, do you have a supplementary?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Akhtar in David Hicks' room, can you step forward and ask your question, please?
Yes, sir.
Councillor Akhtar, please.
Hello, hear me?
Yes, we can.
To the Executive Member for Business and Economic Development, the pandemic has hit hard for many people, not least in the area of jobs. Can you tell me what plan the council has to support those who are out of work and to bring new jobs into the Woking Borough?
Councillor Munro.
Many thanks for your question, Sam. As you rightly point out, the pandemic has created multiple challenges, including for businesses, the wider economy, and employment. The council has already tried to mitigate this impact where possible through providing business rates relief and grants to enable businesses to survive and in the process protect the jobs of their employees. I'm particularly pleased that this council, unlike some, has managed to disperse all of the available grant funding directly to businesses, especially those hit hardest by the pandemic and associated lockdowns. Nevertheless, we know that the claimant count in the borough has increased significantly, albeit from very low numbers prior to the pandemic, and the executive has approved in principle the need to provide additional employment and skills support. In planning how best to deliver this, we have been seeking to better understand local need in the national context, where employment impacts are not as severe as in some initial forecasted suggestions. There's increasing evidence of labour shortages in a number of sectors, as we've seen in the news recently, providing additional job opportunities and mitigating against sustained high levels of unemployment. When we break down levels of unemployment by ward, it is clear that it is widespread across the borough. Of course, there are differences, with some localities having higher levels than others, but there is no one hotspot or concentration, but rather a dispersed pattern of need. Our plans are therefore to maximise accessibility to additional support through developing an outreach model that can deliver out in our communities, utilising community or public venues to provide high quality advice and guidance. This will involve a number of council services working together, as well with partner agencies and organisations such as Adaptable, CAB and Woking Job Support Centre. We will also invest in additional capacity to employ a qualified careers advisor stroke job coach to ensure a high quality service that can meet additional demand. With regard to new jobs, it's worth noting that the borough has a strong economic base and it's made of the most resilient, it is one of the most resilient in the country. The underlying attractiveness of the borough in terms of location, quality of life and highly skilled workforce remain
Sorry,
powerful
Councillor
drivers.
Munro, you've run out of time again. Councillor Actor, do you have a supplementary from Councillor Munro?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Councillor Chadwick, but I believe she's not here. So, okay, she's on Teams. So would you like to ask your question, please, Councillor Chadwick? Thank you.
Yes, hello. I don't know whether you can hear me, but
we can.
Oh, good. What is the council doing to close the gap in the Climate Emergency Action Plan, please?
Thank you for your question, Anne. As you know, Woking Borough Council made a commitment to play as full a role as possible in achieving a carbon neutral Woking Borough by 2030. The council has demonstrated this commitment through developing a clear and ambitious climate emergency action plan. In that action plan, we set out a number of major commitments, such as the construction of solar farms, planting 250,000 trees, developing a net zero local plan, and becoming a net zero carbon organisation. These will significantly reduce the borough's carbon emissions, but we accept that currently there is a gap in our plan to achieving our ambition. The council's power to reduce carbon emissions are limited. We cannot force anyone to do anything. As a result, we need to look at wider picture and to our role as community leader and influencer, which will be equally, if not more critical. To reach net zero across a suite of sectors and activities we cannot directly control, we require partnerships and collaboration as vital ingredients for success. More than half of the emission cuts needed will rely on people and businesses taking low carbon solutions, decisions that are made at a local and individual level. While we can provide the supporting infrastructure, we also require businesses, individuals and other organisations to choose to take action. With this in mind, we're proposing extensive and ongoing dialogue with residents, with businesses and with fellow councillors. We've already started this process by introducing an ongoing series of climate conversations with our business community and via the newly established Youth Council focused on the climate emergency as a key topic for its first meeting and as an ongoing area of focus. I spoke with this group on Monday afternoon and I've already received a number of great ideas from them. We have also committed to an extensive deliberative engagement process with a wide range of stakeholder groups and workshops that will be individually facilitated to develop ideas and proposals for further action that address the climate emergency. This process will not only generate a series of community-led propositions, it will also act as a call for action.
Sorry, Councillor, you've run out of space.
Every time.
Councillor Chadwick, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I do. You mentioned an ongoing dialogue with fellow councillors. Could you tell me how you think that will work, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know that a lot of the councillors in the chamber and then David Hicks and elsewhere, you know, we've got a lot of ideas between us, and I've repeatedly asked for those ideas to be forthcoming. And when we first declared a climate emergency, a lot of those ideas were. But recently there has been a shift from ideas to political posturing, and you know, it's been played out in public, and frankly we need to end that. You know, our residents deserve better, and the task and finish groups that have been facilitated and run excellently by Councillor Swaddle have shown that when we do get together cross-party, some great recommendations come out that can be added to our climate emergency action plan and benefit everybody. So what I'm proposing is a series of independently facilitated workshops similar to the local deliberative processes to be held for councillors. They'll be focused on specific topics where ideas can be shared and worked through with the officers and approved in council in the same way that recommendations from the local deliberative processes will be approved through council as well. Yeah, I believe that all parties have a duty to their residents to come forward with suggestions and to share their ideas and not just their criticisms.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next one is Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Devey. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Sure. I understand that Woking Borough Council organises public funerals, but I'm unclear on exactly what that means. Please can you explain to me what the process is and what happens to someone's remains when someone dies without family members to organise a funeral for them? Thank you.
Thank you, Imogen. That's an excellent question. The council has a duty under Section 46 of the Public Health Control of Diseases Act 1984 to cause to be buried or cremate the body of any person who has died or found to be dead within the borough. This excludes deaths in settings such as hospitals. This is often referred to by many as public funerals, assisted funerals, or paupers' funerals. In carrying out this duty, the council ensures it does so respectfully and works with the funeral director and relevant partners to assist in the process of burial or cremations. Normally, the service would attempt to locate any next of kin. Where there are none to be found, the service would default to a cremation in the absence of any other instruction. Ashes are scattered in the local crematorium, garden of remembrance. In the absence of any other wishes, the service is made aware of. If a will exists that specifies a wish for a burial or other means of disposal, then the authority would do that, would do what it could to honour those wishes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd-Devey, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I do. The reason why I've asked this question is quite simple. During lockdown, my brother allowed a homeless friend to sleep on his sofa. His friend had just sold his mother's house and had not a chance to sort out where he was going to live. Unfortunately, after living with my brother for several months, he died while asleep on the sofa. The body was taken away and given a public funeral. Because he had no family to bury him, it was done by Woking Borough Council. My brother and his many friends were not invited to the funeral and were not told about what happened to him at all. This is despite the deceased living with my brother and a substantial amount of money in his bank account. My brother was given no advice on how to handle the deceased belongings, and they were left in his home. I had to get permission from Woking Borough Council to allow him to dispose of these. So my supplementary question is, while no one expects a public funeral to be lavish, government guidelines indicate that Woking Borough Council are required to liaise with family members, etc., over public funerals. So why has this not happened in this case?
Thank you, Imogen. I'm sorry to hear that. And I don't know the full extent of the story behind what you've just said, but I can certainly find out and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bath. Councillor Firmage, please ask your question.
Oh, thank you. I'll get to ask my question. Great. Yeah, my question is to the Executive Member for Resident Services, Communications and Emissions. A solar farm might be grabbing the headlines, and quite rightly so, but the council has numerous other assets at its disposal to install energy generating measures on, say, car parks, schools, offices, social housing and leisure centres. What has been done to utilise these assets in tackling climate change?
Thank you for your question, Michael. The climate emergency is one of the biggest issues facing us globally, and it's important that we all do our bit. As a council, we want to take an active role in tackling our priorities and carbon footprint. That's why we're continuing to look at ways to improve our own properties and make them more energy efficient. Part of this work has included undertaking extensive energy performance assessments on all council operational properties. By understanding how individual buildings are performing, we can target a range of improvements, including low energy LED lighting and high levels of insulation. The council is working towards introducing more smaller sustainable energy schemes, such as installing solar panels on a range of its properties, including schools, offices and community sites, to help generate sustainable energy and renewables on our own sites. To date, the council has installed solar arrays on multiple properties, including 3/4 of all of our schools and half of the corporate outreach buildings, which include libraries, youth centres, community centres and offices. Making new buildings as energy efficient as possible is also our priority. The new Denton Pastures Activity Centre is the council's first net carbon zero building and joins a range of fantastic green initiatives across the Dinton site, such as the solar powered water aerator in the fishing lake, which was installed in 2019. To obtain a greater impact on reducing carbon emissions, the council is continually working to align and implement different initiatives, such as introducing EV charging points, supporting our green spaces and engaging community with this agenda. Nevertheless, we can't hope to reach carbon neutral within 10 years without implementing some significant actions. Our plan to build solar farms across the borough will help us to generate more renewable energy while reducing carbon emissions in the borough.
Well done. You made it. Is there any supplementary on that one, please?
Yes, there is. And you did it within 3 minutes. Congratulations. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone would agree this is obviously a major issue. But if there are any sort of community buildings or assets in, say, my ward that are either council owned or maybe not council owned, what would be the best way to ensure that they are considered as part of these climate retrofit plans?
A couple of things quickly come to mind. So firstly, if it is a council-owned asset, then an energy assessment should already have been done for it, and there should be plans in place to make the energy efficiency upgrades that are possible at that site. If it's not a community, if it's not a council-owned asset or Woking Borough Council-owned asset, then we can still conduct the energy efficiency surveys. And if you can put forward the sites that you want to me, I can try and make sure that those happen. For community sites, we've launched the local community energy fund. It hasn't done its first fundraising yet. It's planning to do it later on this year. But for community buildings that aren't council assets, that's a fantastic way to get things like solar initiatives or air source heat pumps and other environmental initiatives added to the building at next to no charge to the property owners or the organisation or the clubs that are running it.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay, please ask your question.
When will the examination in public for the local plan update occur? If that date is not available, when will the local plan come to the Borough Council for approval?
Evening, Rochelle. The Local Development Scheme, LDS as it's known, available on our website, sets out the local plans that will be prepared and the key milestones for their preparation. The Central and East Berkshire Joint Minerals and Waste Local Plan, which has been prepared in partnership with Bracknell, Reading and the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead, is currently at examination, having been submitted to the government in February this year. The hearing session for that, if you're interested, is being held in Maidenhead next week, 28th to the 30th of September. Consultation on the revised growth strategy for the local plan update will take place this autumn. The subsequent programme set out in the LDS is that consultation on the submission of the local plan update will take place in the summer of next year, 22, followed by submission to the government during November to December 22 next year. The plan would be at examination from that point, with the detailed timings being set out by the government appointed inspector. We hope that the adoption of the plan will be by the end of 2023.
Do you have a supplementary?
Since the local plans are actually out of date, according to some inspectors at this point, why were so many meetings canceled? There were no meetings at all for the local plan update committee for over 6 months. And in the last 6 months, we probably had a few, but not that many. What is being done to actually get this progress quicker, not taking our time so developers could just build wherever they want?
Well, as you know, because you've been at the meetings, because they're cross-party, we have had meetings. We have had some that we haven't been able to hold because we haven't had the information. We've had to go back around the borough, looking at all these brownfield sites that people keep telling me that they are around and nobody comes up with any. Looking at alternative sites, we keep asking, but nobody comes up with any. So it's taken time, and these things take time, and that's why it's taken so long. And to your point about developers building everywhere. Can you just point me to the last appeal that we lost? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We've got time for one more question. Councillor Fruin, who's on Teams, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies for not being able to be there tonight. As a parent, I remember the stress of going back to school, or my children going back to school after summer holidays. I believe COVID will have increased this stress. For those who have children with special needs, special education needs, the stress is even more significant, given the planning and preparation required to ensure that children are emotionally prepared to go back to school. As a council, we gave some parents less than 48 hours notice of the detail of their school transport changes. Some parents were having to chase the day before to get those details. A number of residents raised their concerns with me and I struggled to get an answer, and I thank all those people that have now answered. I understand the process is split across service areas and executive members. My question is, what happened in this year's special needs school transport process to cause so much upset and distress to these children and their families?
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Councillor Fruin, for the question. Wokingham Borough Council provides home to school transport to approximately 320 SEND pupils, and it's a statutory service. Ahead of the academic year 21-22, the council had to re-tender the contracts to provide this service to ensure it meets legal procurement and tender requirements. As part of the re-tendering, the council sought to optimise transport routes in order to reduce journey times and improve the service for pupils and families. Separate to this process, the council also had undertaken a review of home to school requirements for those eligible SEND pupils to make sure that what was being provided matches what is needed for all pupils. In future, such reviews will take place annually. That's something that we've learned. The review was carried out with the active involvement of SEND Voices. For those that don't know, SEND Voices is the forum for parent carers of children and young people with SEND requirements. We do recognise the impact that it's had on families, and especially those with special educational needs and disabilities. We apologise for any frustration that this has caused. And I will add that I was approached specifically by a number of councillors, and so we put together a briefing for those councillors that was held on Friday the 17th, which Councillor Preamble was present, and members of other parties. And if there are other councillors that want the same thing, it's a complicated situation, and it is difficult to understand. This isn't the forum to explain it all. I will happily put something on if you email me.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Fruin, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, a very quick one, if I may. I understand that the issues this year are almost like a perfect storm, and I'd like to recognise the fact that the officers worked extremely hard to rectify the situation. The issue is that it should not have happened, and I appreciate the briefing we had, but I would like to ask the executive member whether he'd be willing to come back and provide some details once we've had time to settle down with an action plan to ensure that it never happens again. Will he do?
Of course, in any situation where we've had this sort of thing, we do need to learn the lessons and communicate them.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of member question time. Councillor Duran and Blumenthal, you will get written answers in due course. Thank you. We'll move on to item 45, minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. I'll remind you there are no supplementaries, and we have 20 minutes to on this agenda item. We're going to poll now. I'm going to ask Teams first. Anybody on Teams that we should have a question? Can't see anyone. I'm now going to David Hicks' room, please. Anybody there wants to ask a question? Nope.
Councillor Boyd.
Oh, okay, Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hang on, Councillor Boyd. We're still polling. So we've got a lot of questions in the room. We're just tracking the names. Please keep your hands up, please. Right, so I'm going to start with Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Jurgensen, Pauline Jurgensen, that is. In Woodlands Avenue, we have public lay-bys, which are used extensively by people who park to take up recreation on the Bullmersh field, walking their dogs and the like. Recently, we've had a spate of people parking there long term, commercial vehicles, minibuses, a car transporter, and even on one occasion a heavy goods vehicle, which park there for a very long time, depriving residents of being able to park there. Now, knowing how long it takes to get some sort of traffic regulation and timed parking set up, I was wondering if you could commit to helping me try to fast track something through with traffic management.
Thank you for the question, Shirley. You can request, any resident can request TROs online and should do through the website, but I'd be very happy to work with you to try and help you with that particular problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank the Leader of Council for his comments in the press on the inappropriate behaviour of councillors on other local authorities who've been lobbying on behalf of developers to promote large-scale building in the Greenbelt near Twyford. Such large-scale development, should it take place, would have a profound impact on the wards that he and I represent. May I ask him, therefore, to confirm the ruling group on this council will not be including Greenbelt sites in Ruscombe in the new version of the draft local plan?
I don't believe that I'm capable of answering that, because that would be predetermination, even if I knew it.
The next person I'm going to call is Councillor Firmager.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, my question is to Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. In the village of Sonning, there are many instances of speeding, especially along Pound Lane, Charville Lane, Pearson Road and Sonning Lane. I know this unfortunately happens elsewhere. Sonning is an historic village with narrow roads. Sonning Parish Council, and including myself, have been pressing for road calming measures and for an upgrade crossing outside Sonning School, which is down Pound Lane. In fact, Sonning Parish Council have been doing this for a number of years. Sonning Parish Council also sent speeding data to Wokingham Borough Council for some time, and nothing has ever happened. There is a strength of feeling in the village, and the residents of Sonning feel, well, really they feel let down and forgotten. This was shown with a packed Sonning Parish Council meeting, which is absolutely odd, to say the least, on Tuesday, the 14th of September, 2021. Is there anything you can suggest in order for me to do something about this? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Michael. The Borough Council has undertaken investigations into traffic speeds in Pound Lane, Charville Lane, Pearson Road and Sonning Lane, and is aware of the concerns raised by residents in the Parish Council, with whom it's in regular contact. We're aware of some instances of excess speeds in these roads and have referred both residents and the Parish Council to Thames Valley Police for enforcement, as we have no ability to enforce speed limits at this council. These roads generally have a good safety record despite carrying frequent traffic. Borough Council engineers have been liaising with the Parish Council prior to and throughout the COVID pandemic and have undertaken studies to determine the need for change of speed limit in all these roads. These investigations have shown that average vehicle speeds upon which the speed limits are required to be based are all below the existing speed limit, and therefore there are no grounds for changing them. Despite this, the Council continued to investigate the possibility of extending the existing 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Pound Lane and has proposed measures which is presented to the Parish Council and received feedback. Further discussion about the proposals is being undertaken with Thames Valley Police as the enforcement authority, as generally they have to agree with any speed limit changes. The form and location of existing raised zebra crossings in Pound Lane is considered appropriate for the requirements of pedestrians using it, both for the school and to access the open space and bus stop. The measures proposed for Pound Lane include some changes to the existing crossing, the but there are no grounds for changing the type of crossing. It's suggested that residents speak with the parish council who are aware of all the proposals being developed by the Borough Council. And I'd be very happy to meet you, Michael, and help explain a bit more detail of this stuff, and also talk to you about what we may be able to do.
Thank you. Councillor Nickelbourne.
Thank you. My question is directed to the Executive Member for the Environment and Leisure. I believe the Council has CCTV equipment that can be deployed to fly tipping hotspots, and have suggested to officers that it be used at a notorious fly tipping hotspot in my ward, but do not believe that this has yet happened. Would you be willing to follow this up if I email you the details of the location?
Thank you for your question. As you know, there's a fly tipping working group which has been set up, cross-party working group, and I think the most appropriate channel would be for your representatives, that's Paul Fishwick and Councillor Clive Jones, to be actually bringing that into that working group to actually resolve. But certainly that's what the cameras are there for, and I'd be happy to work with you through that working group to help you do that.
Thank you for that question. Councillor Rebecca Margetts.
Thank you. My question is for Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. Residents of Finchampstead have raised concerns about proposed parking charges at Avery Corner Car Park and California Crossroads. These car parks are currently free, which is essential for local business and residents of Finchampstead to use the local amenities. Please, can you confirm that there will be no plans to impose parking changes here?
Thank you, Councillor Margetts. The proposals that you've seen were actually not intended to change car parking charges, except for a 15-minute free parking in Dinton Pastures and 30 minutes free parking in visitors' bays at the town council, at the borough council offices. The shops in California Cross area have had a new 1 hour maximum stay restriction, and that will be introduced to ensure the spaces are used by local shoppers rather than by longer stay visitors. And that might be something that we could also do with Shirley's question that she raised earlier.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bishop.
Thank you. My question is for the Executive Member for Environment and Leisure, and it relates to outdoor fitness trainer permits. Last year, the Council, without consultation with residents, imposed restrictions and very high fees on fitness trainers using borough parks. After a public outcry, there was a U-turn against fees of up to £1,500. But a trainer wishing to use a borough park now needs to have a public liability insurance of £10 million, a DBS check, and a personal training certificate before they can use one of Woking Borough's public parks. As a result, most fitness trainers have stopped using the Barkham Rec. It looks like they help keep troublemakers away because they've been replaced by drug dealers and vandals. And there was a recent arson attack on the playground in broad daylight. Will the council look into the unintended consequences that the outdoor fitness trainer permits have had and give us a date for replacing the vandalised play equipment, please?
Thank you for that question. I'll look into that and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris.
Thank you. Residents from Trongford would like to know what the council knows about any possible proposed council changes within the authorities in Berkshire.
There is no changes proposed to the council authorities in Berkshire. The article which has appeared in the press is extremely misleading. We became unitaries in, I believe, 1997, and some people here would have been there at the time. And at that time, various legacy institutions continued. And with the creation of the LEP, that became a new institution which was serving the Berkshire authorities. With the devolution agenda, the government has indicated that it would like to do county deals, and the county is just a word, it doesn't mean county. it could be Ferris deals or Jones deals with larger combinations of authorities than we are. So the proposal is from the Berkshire leaders, which will meet every month, and the Berkshire chief executives meet every month, Berkshire finance directors meet every month. And the proposal is that we look and explore with government what benefit there is in going as a combination rather than just going with unitaries. The funding which the government used to put through the LEP is intended for the government to pay direct to local authorities. So in answer to your question, there is no proposal to a combination of unitaries to new Berkshire County Council. And if you've seen my track record in the last 3 years, we've been walking away from joint arrangements as we're going out of fashion. And the last 2 are in my sights. So no, I wouldn't welcome it. Neither would the other authorities. Does that answer your question, Lindsay? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay, please.
What will be done to make the Hatchwood Mill Country Park adaptable by Woking Borough Council? Since there is no bond and planning enforcement is not very effective, the developers close their local subsidiary as they normally do when they finish the estate. How can we be assured that the park is actually going to be taken over? Or is it going to be left to rot or what?
I'll definitely look into it with Connor tomorrow, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you. The final one at the moment on the list, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much. Pauline, this is for you. On Evandens Lane, there's a 60-mile-an-hour section, and in spring 2019, I reported a safety defect in the road, which was unsafe for cyclists. After 6 months of chasing, Highways came back and said it wasn't a safety concern. 2 weeks ago, a very confident regular cyclist had such a nasty accident in that exact spot. If another car had been coming the other way, he'd be dead now. 2 broken bones, fractured hands, stitches in his arm, stitches in his leg. He's in a very bad way. They're now saying that it is a safety defect. It's not deteriorated. It's not been picked up in any highways inspections. And this isn't the only case where we're having these safety defects reported in the borough and them not fixing, then cyclists hurting themselves. So my question is, when are we going to take cyclist safety seriously, please?
I can certainly assure you that I do take cyclist safety seriously, especially seeing as I came off my bike yesterday in Sonning on the other side of the boundary. But and as an aside, if you've got any particular questions where you think people are not taking safety seriously, please do get in touch with me urgently. Give me a ring, send me a text. I'll be very happy to look into it.
Thank you. Councillor Ross, then followed by Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is predominantly on highways. Very recently, there's been an announcement that the 9-mile ride they call it Crowthorne now. They used to call it Finchampstead. In fact, it's working without. It's going to be closed for some considerable period of time, or likely to be, for sewer connections. So my 2 questions are, one, it's not helpful that it didn't explain what that really meant in terms of road closures. But secondly, there's a rumour that at the same time Bracknell are closing Duke's Ride, which would be the alternative route. Before this rumour gets stronger, I wonder if it could be investigated and make sure that Wokingham and Bracknell have got their eggs in the same basket.
Absolutely, definitely, in a few minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bray and David Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for Pauline about road closures on the Reading Road and elsewhere in Winnersh. We've had an enormous number of overnight road closures, and since some of them residents have not been allowed access to their properties, and one lady had to wait for 45 minutes and was late for work. And next week, we've got road closures overnight in Robin Hood Lane. And I believe still some overnight work on the Reading Road. And now we've got daytime closures on the Reading Road as well. Can you please look into the traffic management that accompanies those and do something to ensure that traffic gets through as smoothly as possible, or that when diversion routes are signposted, they are actually available and people don't go up to the diversion point, get told by the workmen to go one particular way and then go that way and find it doesn't work either. Thank you.
Certainly, Prue.
Thank you. Councillor Fithrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Highways and Transport. It's partly on the lines that Councillor Prue Rose has been talking about. The A329 Reading Road, Winnish Relief Road project has had a series of overnight closures up to the 4th of September. Recently, one resident leaving for work at 3:30 a.m. was made to wait 45 minutes and was late for her shift. However, and without warning to residents and the local borough ward councillors, the road was closed again to complete unfinished planned works on the nights of the 6th and 7th of September. Even an ambulance with blue lights was witnessed needing to turn around due to the sudden closure. This caused significant frustration for the travelling public, who were unable to gain access to Woodward Close. For example, from the Reading direction, they were told by operatives on site to use the Winnish Relief Road. On reaching the closure point, again, they were told by operatives to use the diversion route through Wokingham, a 5-mile detour. Arriving at the closure point by Sadler's Lane, they were told to return on the diversion route and approach from the Reading direction. This is unsatisfactory way to treat our residents and the travelling public, with frustration shown on social media, for which you are a member. With a further 3 nights of closures planned next week, will the executive member ensure that her department controls access for residents properly and local ward members and residents are informed ahead of these types of works in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I would recommend to every resident that they keep an eye on a site called roadworks.org that gives you the absolute up-to-date diversions and diversion routes and times for closure. Things do change. I mean, with the closure on the Reading Road, which was down to the connection of the new bypass, was certainly delayed due to other engineering works. And it's very important that this data is out, real time, rather than waiting for press releases and that sort of thing. I'll certainly do my best to make sure that the signage is up to date. And as you know, I've been very active on social media, getting people the right answers. If you would like to tell me or question about things, email me. Don't wait, 20 days after the event before you mention it. That would be helpful.
Thank you. That's the last of the questions I've got. I'm going to just do one final sweep before we move on to the next agenda item. I can see no hands in the chamber, no hands in the David Hicks. Nothing on there. So thank you very much.
Councillor Chris. Sorry, there is one person here.
Okay.
Sorry. A question to Councillor Pauline Jorgensen. Recently, during the resurfacing of the Wokingham Road, I witnessed a member of the public harassing the workmen and trying to force her way through the roadworks on a Sunday. Will you pass on my regards and thanks for the professional way they handled that member of the public and the threat to safety she posed?
Thank you, Chris. I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's end of agenda item 44. So we're moving on to agenda item 46, statements by the leader, executive members and deputy executive members. We have a 20-minute session here. Can I remind anyone making a statement, you cannot speak for more than 5 minutes. Thank you. So let's start. Hands up if you're going to be making a statement. Councillor Hulsall, you got your hand up as well, have you? Yep. Finger up. Okay. So I'm going to go to Councillor Margetts first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I wanted to take this opportunity tonight to update members on the situation locally with primary care. Our GPs have experienced a 40% rise in demand over the past 3 to 4 months, which has been very challenging. We believe every resident who needs it should have a face-to-face appointment. However, it's perfectly possible to get what you need from the GP and from primary care without a face-to-face meeting. And we would encourage all residents to do this wherever possible to get the quickest response and to enable our GPs to deal with this demand. To support our GPs and help our residents with the correct advice, we'll be launching a PR campaign over the upcoming weeks to advise residents on the best way to access primary health services and what can be achieved, and there are many things, without a face-to-face appointment with the GP. As many members will know, GPs are commissioned and contracted to the Berkshire West CCG. WBC has no control of their performance. In the past few weeks, the nationwide GP patient survey has been published, which ranks GPs across the country based on several measures related to quality of service. Now, surveys are always a slightly blunt instrument to judge anything, but there were some key trends that came out from this. We have some GPs in Wokingham who are doing a very good job despite this situation. The Finchampstead practice, Wargrave practice, Wilderness, Burma Hill practice and New Wokingham Road surgery all scored in the top 10% in the UK. And I wanted to thank them and commend them for this achievement. However, we also have 4 GPs who are in the bottom 10% based on this survey. They're also GPs which residents and members have raised concerns and questions with me about in the past. These 4 are the Wokingham Medical Centre, Loddon Vale, Woos Hill and Twyford. The Wokingham Medical Centre has been in the bottom 10% according to this survey since 2017. As I mentioned earlier, GPs are commissioned by the CCG, who are 100% responsible for their performance. However, it is the duty and responsibility of WBC to raise residents' concerns to the CCG when this is appropriate. I believe our residents deserve better than this, and last week I wrote to the head of the local ICS and the commissioning lead at the CCG, raising this issue with them over these 4 surgeries, asking them to provide more active support to resolve the problems with them, and also to implement improvement plans and report back to us without delay. I'll be happy to keep members informed on progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Margaret. Councillor Halsall? Okay, Councillor Parton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take a few minutes to update you all on a few salient features within my portfolio. Waste collections is one, and we have continued on a weekly basis despite the staff shortages, challenges thrown at us by the COVID pandemic. Whilst the neighbouring authorities have stopped collecting their garden waste, we have continued collecting everything. We are not out of the woods yet, but we are doing all we can to provide a valuable weekly collection of waste. And there's a lot of issues with the drivers, Mr. Mayor, which is causing a problem. So I'll keep the members updated if we get any problems. But so far, we're doing okay. And I would therefore like to thank and congratulate our officers and contractors for delivering a valuable service to our residents during these difficult times. Mr. Mayor, thank you also for joining me yesterday in opening the Dinton Activity Centre yesterday. The climbing wall you saw was hand painted and the murals carefully selected to reflect the flora and fauna at Dinton in both a woodland scene and a lake scene. Physical education, environmental education, and fun for all rolled into one. And as you watched, the wind catchers on the roof allow for natural ventilation, air conditioning to assist active cooling where needed. The byproduct of warm air is converted into energy to heat water for our underfloor heating in the hall. Solar panels and air source heat pumps are used to generate the rest of the electricity for heating and lighting. The activity centre will be the first carbon neutral facility that Wokingham Borough Council owns. Mr. Mayor, I've also finally to let you know about our waste strategy. I've initiated a waste strategy that will comprise short-term and long-term measures to help manage the borough's waste.
In the short term, we will be encouraging the public to reduce waste and increase recycling to reduce costs and deliver savings for the council. In the longer term, we will be consulting the public on their views on how we should develop waste services in the light of the climate emergency that we're in at the moment. The development process has begun with involvement from the overview and scrutiny panel who will oversee a project, and it is expected a draft waste strategy will be formulated by late spring of next year. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to give a brief update to Council on 3 topics within my area of responsibility. The first is to say that there has been a motion put forward to this Council for many months relating to the local electricity bill. Having looked into this in some detail, I've come to the conclusion that the passing of this bill could benefit our climate emergency and our efforts to reduce our carbon footprint and to increase the financial viability of localised energy generation. With this in mind, I've done as the motion requires, and I've written to each of the 4 MPs that represent residents in Wokingham and also to the Minister of State for Energy, calling on them to put their support behind the bill and to work with others within their parties to ensure that this legislation passes and is enacted. If you will indulge me, I'll take a moment to read out part of the response that I received from the Right Honourable Theresa May. She said, community energy is a key part of clean growth and can decarbonise energy in local areas while bringing other economic and social benefits. However, she added, there are other considerations that must be taken into account. For example, the bill seeks to alter the licensing provisions. Ministers have expressed their concern that changing the licensing framework would create wider distortions elsewhere in the energy system. I understand that. Instead, the government is encouraging stakeholders to engage with the ongoing work that the government is undertaking with Ofgem to support flexibility and innovation more generally. This can help identify how local elements can play a part in the solution. Finally, her response also told me that with increased electrification of the heat and transport, I'm encouraged that the government and Ofgem continue to work to ensure that the systems and markets that will support this remain flexible, secure, competitive, and that they meet the needs of consumers. Mr. Mayor, from this response, I take it that whether the local energy bill passes or not, work is being done to achieve its fundamental intent and objectives, which, as I already said, could benefit our climate emergency and our efforts to reduce our carbon footprint. Staying on the energy theme, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to provide an update on 2 schemes that I launched at the tail end of last year, the EcoFlex Help to Heat scheme and the Green Home Grant scheme. As with the scheme nationally, the Green Home Grant scheme, known as LAD1A, which we entered into in partnership with with Bracknell Forest Council, has not been the success that we hoped. We ourselves found the scheme to be very difficult to navigate, and it was not clear what could and could not be included. Couple that to a national skills shortage meant that we were only able to help 5 households out of those who applied locally. All of us involved in this project are disappointed by this. Conversely, the scheme that we created locally, however, the EcoFlex Help to Heat scheme, was substantially more successful for us and significantly more successful than we had anticipated. You will remember, Mr. Mayor, that when I launched this scheme, our intention was to retrofit approximately 400 houses across Wokingham Borough using this scheme. To date, Mr. Mayor, I'm delighted to inform Council that 877 homes have been assessed and benefited from either cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, or both, all installed at little or no cost to the resident. In doing so, fuel bills have been reduced for some of the most at-risk of fuel poverty households across our borough, a move which, considering the recent fluctuations in fuel prices, shows great foresight on behalf of us, the council officers, and will benefit the families of these properties greatly. The final matter I'd like to discuss is Area DD. For the benefit of councillors who are unaware of Area DD, this is a piece of land near Asda in Earley that is owned and maintained by Wokingham Borough Council. It's a mixture of woodland and scrubland, and with minimal routine management has been allowed to develop naturally to support a variety of wildlife species and biodiversity. In June, Councillor Pauline Jorgensen and I met with the council's ecology officer at the request of representatives of the Early Environmental Group to discuss options for protecting and preserving this area of wood and grassland now that it is no longer considered a site for future residential or commercial property development. As a result of this meeting, we have agreed that a climate emergency-based management and maintenance strategy will be drafted and consulted on. This strategy will then be used as a basis for increasing biodiversity, enhancing the woodland and scrubland space and for tidying up the remaining debris and dumped waste from the area. I will update council on the relevant timings of this strategy and any related works in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Work continues on our congestion management programme. As part of this, have been successful in our bid for £250,000 of government funding. This will enable us to improve traffic signals with queue detection and journey time calculation to smooth out traffic and reduce queues. Upgrade equipment to low energy technology, providing more reliability and reduce maintenance and energy costs. And we'll also introduce new technology to improve pedestrian crossings. We're installing car park management equipment in several of our car parks. This first set of detectors at Carnival and Denmark Street are up and running. These detectors will feed information on vacant spaces into user apps and also strategic VMS signs guiding people to car parks with available spaces. I've just approved the amendment to our traffic regulation orders, which takes steps to deal with dangerous parking identified by local residents by introducing new parking restrictions in some of our hotspots, for example, around Loddon School. These restrictions will be implemented in the coming weeks. We will continue to work on our bus service improvement plan. All transport authorities are required to develop a plan in partnership with transport providers in the area with the aim of improving joint working on bus service development. It is also required to enable us to qualify for bus recovery funding on the 1st of September. The BSIP must be published by the 31st of October, so it's quite urgent. Having delivered cycleways and greenways across the new Winnersh Relief Road, California Way, Observer Way, Barkham Bridge and London Road cycling and walking improvements in the borough, cycling and walking improvements in the borough continue to gather momentum. The first stage of the public consultation on the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan has completed, and we're talking to local bodies such as Watch, town and parish councils and councillors to help prioritise the improvement work. Future cycle route schemes planned include a 19-kilometre route from north to south of the borough between the Thames Pass at Wargrave and Blackwater Valley Path at Swallowfield. Cycleway links between Woodley and Winnersh Triangle, a cycle route between Woodley Town Centre and Palmer Park, and finally a cycleway linking Winnersh and North Worthington. We've received a further £94,000 from the government to progress our cycle infrastructure planning and deliver training to promote cycle active initiatives. The recent Beat the Street Initiative Award scheme, which the Mayor gave the awards for just a couple of days ago, shows how popular cycling and walking has become. More than 6,000 residents took part, travelling an astonishing 151,000 miles during the game. Finally, our road resurfacing is progressing, and that's part of the reason for the traffic lights, with more than 50 roads being fully resurfaced and another 30 plus are being surface dressed or micro asphalted this year as part of our maintenance programme. Over the summer since June, 528 potholes were also repaired, keeping our pledge to continue to improve the state of our roads. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Halsall.
Before I speak, can I just ask how much time we've got? Okay. 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I want to discuss three important matters: the health and social care changes, the plight of Afghan families, and some of the latest information about COVID. The current rate of COVID within the borough is 211 per 100,000. This has fallen back in line with the South East and England after a period of higher rates resulting from the increased asymptomatic testing amongst young people for attendance at the Reading Festival and return to school testing. Most of the cases within our borough now fall within the school-age population in line with the rest of the country. And whilst the rate remains stable, it remains high. We must remain cautious and continue to work to reduce transmission of the virus within our borough. Following the announcement of the government's winter plan vaccination remains at the heart of our response to COVID. Woking is doing well, 86% of having received their first vaccine. However, there's still work to be done. There are over 60,000 residents that are due their booster vaccines in the coming weeks and months, and we're working closely with the CCG and primary care colleagues to support the delivery of the booster programme. We continue to work to increase uptake, particularly of second vaccinations in under the age of 40, and have launched a vaccine helpline to provide individual advice and information to residents. We are working also through our Children's Services Task Force with all the schools within Woking, both in the management of COVID and also providing support of vaccine rollout. If I turn to the recent announcement on health and social care changes, I'm delighted that finally a government is taking some action here. It's been 10 years since it occurred. Still not. What is proposed doesn't solve adult care, social care problems. Most of the money is going to the NHS, with the risk that rather a fair proportion of this money going to social care, a further burden will fall along on the local taxpayer. Regarding the funding of the 12 billion a year, this will only raise 1.8 billion for adult social care. 1.8 billion will not solve the problems in adult social care. It has big risks for Wokingham, as we have a lot of private funders. Many people must pay for care. The worry here is that 1.8 billion will not cover the impact, and the more burden will fall on councils, particularly like Wokingham, where we have a high proportion of private fundings. I am lobbying the government in every channel that I have to ensure that we don't ended up with a burden which could be very substantial for us. On the matter of Afghan refugees, officers from the council have been in continuous liaison with the MHCLG and the South East Strategic Partnership for Migration, who are leading on the settlement programme. It is clear to say that it's a significant undertaking, as some 15,000 refugees have recently arrived in the UK, with 1,500 in the South East. We are keen to ensure Wokingham Borough plays its part in assisting these families, and through our conversations with the MHCLG and partners, we've agreed to take 3 families. Of course, it's not as simple as that, as identifying and supplying housing requirements, but the overall support required to ensure the families can successfully relocate to the borough and become a welcome part of our inclusive community. As a first step, officers from our housing team are busily looking to access suitable properties and will liaise with the Strategic Partnership for Migration, who will carry out a matching exercise to assess suitability. Once assessed, the process can commence for the relocation, ensuring that we have the necessary support in place to meet the individual needs of the families. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your indulgence.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 47, which is statements from council-owned companies. I'll remind everyone that it's 10 minutes, this agenda item. Sorry.
In accordance with Standing Order 4.2.12M, please can we have a vote to extend the meeting beyond 10:30? Thank you.
Thank you. You'll obviously have to be recorded again. So can I chivvy up David Hicks, please, with Councillor Actor at the front. They're moving quite quickly. That's good. So we will start as soon as we see Councillor Actor in the...
Does it require a seconder, Mr. Mayor? I'll happily.
Yeah, I'm seconding it anyway.
Sam Akhtar.
Against.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Harry Bath.
Again.
Rachel Bishop-Furr. For. Laura Blumenthal.
Against.
Chris Bowring.
Against.
Shirley Boyd.
For.
Prue Bray.
For.
Rachel Burgess.
For.
Anne Chadwick. Stephen Conway.
For.
Phil Cunnington.
Against.
Peter Dennis.
For.
Carl Duran.
For.
Lindsay Ferris.
For.
Michael Firmager.
Against.
Paul Fishwick.
For.
Maria G.
For.
Guy Granderson.
Against.
John Halsall.
Against.
David Hare.
For.
Pauline Hillier-Simmons.
Against.
Microphone, John.
Graham Howe,
Howe against.
Clive Jones,
For.
Pauline Jorgensen,
Again.
Norman Jorgensen,
Again.
John Kaiser,
Against.
For.
Abdul Loys,
Against.
Morag Malvern,
For.
Charles McGett,
Against.
Rebecca McGett,
Against.
Adrian Mather,
For.
Andrew McCubbin,
For.
Stuart Monroe,
Against.
Gregor Murray,
Against.
Barry Patman,
Against.
Jackie Rant,
Against.
Angus Roth,
Against.
Daniel Sargent,
Against.
Ian Shenton,
For.
Imogen Shepherd de Bay,
For.
Rochelle Shepherd de Bay,
For.
Caroline Smith,
For.
Chris Smith,
Against.
Wayne Smith,
Against.
Alison Swaddle, Against, Shahid Yunus.
Against.
Extension not agreed.
Thank you for that. So we will continue with agenda item 47. We will get to the first motion on timings. So hands up those from the council-owned companies who wish to speak. Is there anyone in the David Hicks that wishes to speak on the council-owned? I think there's one person in there. No. So, Councillor Eunice, you've only got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I would like to make a statement as a chair of London Homes. In May, Alquin Clark stepped down as a chair of London Homes and Councillor Ferris resigned his post as a non-executive director. Myself and Norman Jorgensen were nominated to the board by WBC Holding Company, and I'm pleased to say that I was selected as a chair at a meeting earlier this week. I want to convey my thanks to Alquin and Councillor Ferris for their valuable time served. I'm looking forward to working closely with the other independent non-executive directors who bring with them a wealth of industry knowledge and can collectively provide appropriate commercial challenge and operational scrutiny whilst ensuring that Northern Homes maintains its independence as a registered provider. For the benefit of our new members, Northern Home is for-profit registered provider of social and affordable housing. We currently hold 112 properties in our portfolio with further 40 under construction. This week, the Northern Homes Board signed off the end of year financial accounts for financial year 2021 and reported a small profit of approximately 3,000. Whilst the recorded profit may not appear to be significant, Northern Homes continue to generate a positive financial return to the council through the strategic payment of interest charges associated with the development build. This is in addition to the payment of services across the council, such as finance and legal support, as well as the housing management function delivered to the tenant via the tenant services. Despite delays as a result of COVID-19, Brexit, and industry-wide construction materials shortages, Arnott Avenue, as the first phase of Ghost Ride regeneration program, is progressing well. 26 properties have not been handed over, and the quality of the finished homes is excellent. The residents are very happy with the new homes. The final 20 shared ownership properties at this site are due to hand over in late October, with 19 of the 20 flats already reserved. Northern Homes has taken its first step into the Section 106 market and have been selected as the registered provider of choice by 2 developers. We are purchasing a total of 4 houses from Hicks Development for shared ownership in Early and Hurst. This market has remained robust despite COVID-19, and all the shared ownership properties are selling well. We're also purchasing 16 supported living properties within Craftsman Hatch Farm Dairies Estate in Winnish. London Homes also received funding from Ministry of Local Housing and Local Government for the purchase of up to 5 one-bedroom properties on the open market for rough sleepers in the borough. London Homes were able to secure 4 of the 5 properties, and we are now beginning to offer those residents a new start in life in a safe and secure homes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's probably good time to do this piece straight after Councillor Eunice. It gives great pleasure to talk about the results of the council companies, all of the housing companies. As members may recall, this is an invest and then get a return, like most businesses. So I've got the figures for 2018, 19 and 19 and 20, and the presentation of 2021 will be finalised fairly soon. But I think it's important to reiterate these numbers as it clearly shows the progress made so far. So I'll go through each one. Working Borough Holdings Limited, which is the overall holding company, which in fact invests the money in the other companies, has moved from 1819 at 212 investment to down to 62,000 investment, an improvement of 150,000. Working Housing Limited showed a profit of 1819 of 153,000. In 1920, that moved to 650,000, an improvement of 497,000. London Homes, an investment at a loss of 218 in 1819 to a profit of 54, an improvement of 164,000. Berrybrook Homes with an investment of 231 to a profit of 15,000, an improvement of 256,000. So overall, an investment on the early years at 508,000 to a profit of 650,000. That's an overall improvement of 1.165 million. This is a turnaround of over $1 million, as I've just said. I'm also happy to say that despite the COVID issues, we are on course to continue not only to deliver much needed affordable homes, as you've also heard from Councillor Eunice, but also continue to produce profits to be used to provide services to the borough residents. So operationally and financially, all the company's projects remain on course as originally planned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Marget. Councillor Marget, please.
Thank you. Just to update members on Optalis, Optalis celebrates its 10th birthday this year and is now more closely aligned and delivering more value to WBC than ever before. Recent years have brought a real focus on service improvement and also financial efficiency, which has led to the following highlights. The supported employment service remains #1 in the South East for the last 2 years and #3 in the UK for learning disability employment outcomes. Optalis continues to redesign and improve key services. A recent example of this is the Community Lives programme, which is based about day services. It's building on the best of what we currently offer and enabling customers to have a more active part in the community. The short-term and reablement team have recently had a CQC inspection, have been rated good, which demonstrates the support people receive to enable them to reach their full potential of independence. Optalis staff have worked very hard through the pandemic to keep all of the customers safe. I'd like to commend David Birch and his team, everyone who works there, who worked really well with our care homes task force. Optalis is now completely aligned from a strategic perspective with WBC. WBC services within Optalis have been financially ring-fenced, so there's no question of any cross-subsidy between WBC and RBWM. And the council now has complete visibility of and input into everything the company does. Transparency has been key to building trust in what the council does what Optalis does for the council and residents. In terms of financial efficiencies, these changes have led to a £1 million one-off saving over the last 2 years, and Optalis is on course to deliver a further £1.4 million ongoing saving over the life of the MTFP. Changes upcoming in the future, including further streamlining of the governance and management, which I think basically will give more control over what we're doing and where we're going, and we'll see further improvements. And I hope to say more about this in coming meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Jorgensen and David Hicks, please. You've only got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was pleased to join the Loddon Homes board recently, as Councillor Eunice said. It's great to see the progress that the companies have made over the last few years. I was last involved with the holding company about 5 years ago, and there are lots of really good schemes gone through since then, which is great, including the first phase of the Gorse Ride scheme. So we're now getting quality homes built for our residents, affordable social housing, shared equity schemes. So it's great to be able to help so many of our residents. There are many projects being completed already, and there are hundreds more in the pipeline, which is very encouraging. We can do that and make a return to the council. I commend the work that the company is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the end of item 47. Since by my watch it is 10:14, we can actually start the first motion. So can Shirley Bowitt please make her way into the chamber? While she's doing that, we have got only, well, be about 15 minutes on this motion. As soon as we reach 10:30, the debate will cease and we'll go straight to the vote. So, Councillor Bowitt, would you like to propose, sorry, have you got a seconder for your motion?
I have. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. Would you move straight in and speak to the motion?
I certainly would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This council aspires to a 70% recycling rate by 2030 and resolves to make it easier for every resident to recycle at every opportunity, whether at home or on the move. Firstly, by replacing all litter bins in the borough with dual litter and recycling bins, commencing with those in local town centres, shopping parades and parks. And secondly, to provide dual litter and recycling bins on popular walking routes to schools in places not covered in the first paragraph above. This is a very simple motion. When I'm out and about in the borough, I see overflowing litter bins, which on closer inspection are almost always full of drink cans and plastic bottles. When I'm out and about elsewhere in the country, I see dual bins with a section for litter and a section for recyclables. And I ask myself, why do we not have these in Wokingham? The majority of our residents are sensible people. They put their litter in bins and they want to recycle. The already high rate of recycling in the borough is testament to that. I therefore urge you to vote for this motion to give our wonderful residents more recycling opportunities to help protect the planet for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you for your brevity. So I need to ask the question, is there anybody who wishes to speak against this motion?
No, sorry, Mr. Mayor, do I not get to second the motion?
I need to ask this question first. So okay, so we're going to carry on the debate. So the seconder, do you want to reserve your right to speak later?
I'll speak now, thank you.
Okay, please do.
So I wholeheartedly support this motion. It's a very straightforward change that I believe most residents would want and would actually expect us to already have done. If we really want more recycling, we need to make it easier for residents, and this is an obvious example of how we can do that. So I hope that everyone, or almost everyone, will vote for this evening. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your brevity. Please, can I see a show of hands in the chamber who wishes to speak? Can we also see a show of hands in David Hicks' room, please? Or at least tell me who wants to speak in there, or on the team. No. Okay, so right. I'm going to call Councillor Duran first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll also be very brief. I support this motion, and I think the only thing about it that maybe seems to be an issue is cost, and obviously budgeting this in. But you know, there's no real time frame here. I mean, it says by 2030, so there's not a massive commitment to have it done in the next year or 5 even. So I don't see why this shouldn't be. It's not too onerous. It seems like an obvious thing to do and an easy thing for you to say yes to.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd-Bay.
Council, I commend and support the idea behind this motion. If we are to be serious about looking after our environment, it should not be just focused on reducing carbon. It may also be about controlling pollutants such as litter, recycling and reusable materials so that we do not have to use fresh materials. We need as much possible to help our residents to do this. To make it easy for everyone, I would very much like to see additional recycling bins included in all town centres. I realise we can only talk about the areas under Woking Borough Council control. I would not expect to see all of our existing bins immediately replaced. However, I might very much like to see additional bins for recycling added where possible, particularly in the busy areas, which in Wokingham should be around Broad Street and the train station. We do already have some recycling bins in Wokingham town centre. They were required in the areas that are under the management of Wokingham Town Council. During lockdown, when people could only get takeaway drinks, all of our bins were overwhelmed with paper cups and food packaging every day. But they may well have been thrown into general waste because the recycling bins couldn't cope. Even when the bins are full, it seems that only very few people will be willing to take the recycling home. Thankfully, now that the cafes are open again, people are using Chinaware again, this has eased off. But I would certainly support the addition of recycling bins to ease the load and encourage everyone to do more recycling. We have, after all, just approved 20 million for a solar farm. Why not do this one? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kaiser.
Thank you. I'm somewhat hearing Councillor Duran. Your motion seems to ask for it immediately. Could you just clarify that?
We can't hear because
sorry.
Sorry. By making it easy, recycle at every opportunity, whether at home or on the move, by replacing all litter bins in the borough with dual litter and recycling bins, commencing with those in local town centres, shopping parades and parks. So it's kind of a commitment to start the process, really. It's a commencement.
Thank you. I would just say that comparing it with a solar farm that will probably contribute nearly £1 million a year is a bit silly, but there you go.
Thank you, Councillor Kaiser. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I would deeply love to be able to support this motion, but unfortunately, I simply can't. This motion is clearly going to cost a significant amount of money. My understanding is that due to fire and health and safety regulations, and because they have to be made out of antimicrobial products, these bins cost about £1,000 each. And across our borough, we're going to need hundreds, if not thousands of them. This motion is completely uncosted. It hasn't told us how much this is going to cost. And the irony of various groups this evening calling for increased scrutiny and wanting to be able to go into finite detail about the solar farm and then being prepared to accept this motion without it being costed, I think is frankly ridiculous. We've no idea how much resource is going to be required to do this. We've no plan here to tell us what's going to happen to the existing bins and what the plan for decommissioning them is going to be, and will they be recycled? Mr. Mayor, I know that you've been having meetings with the leaders recently. I know that you want to be making recommendations to the Constitutional Working Group in terms of how we move this.
Suggestions, not recommendations.
Sorry, suggestions. You're absolutely right, Mr. Mayor. I apologise. Please, within those suggestions, could you suggest that motions that are put before this council also have to be budgeted? And if I put this into the Carbon Emergency Action Plan, I would have to put in a budget. I would have to be able to say how much carbon it was going to save us. This does neither of those things. Blindly committing our council to an unknown amount of cost, particularly following COVID, I think it would be absolutely irresponsible. If we really want this to happen, we should be including it in the Climate Emergency Action Plan. It should be costed. It should be budgeted. We should know how much resource is going to be required for it. And that way we move forward with it.
Thank you. Councillor Barth. Councillor Barth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very interesting proposals, but the first one's to replace all litter bins in the borough with dual litter and recycling bins, commencing with those in local town centres. And strangely enough, recycling on the go is very, very popular in town centre settings, and we do have it in Wokingham Town Centre and Elmsfield, where we've installed new purpose-built litter bins.
The recycling is currently being separated and is helping with our overall recycling rate, which is around about 58%. So we are prudent to install dual purpose system bins where appropriate. And the second point that was made was to provide dual litter bins and recycling bins on popular walking routes. Mr. Mayor, this would not be cost effective for two reasons. Number one, the cost of replacing approximately 1,000 litter bins across the borough would be significant. And second point is that the amount of total waste collected in litter bins is approximately 600 tons per annum. And given the quality of recycling collected in dual bins, and the amount of recycling would be very, very small, based on 50% over 300 tons being captured, it would only increase our overall recycling by 0.5%, whilst at the same time incurring the council in significant costs of ongoing bin replacement. So with significant costs, significant amounts of food waste, for instance, 24% of it lying in the blue bags, 7,200 tons approximately, and paper and card, 8% in the blue bags, still on the blue bags. And it makes sense that we concentrate on getting this diverted to recycling first of all. So therefore, Mr. Mayor, I would not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Councillor Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't planning to speak on this, but when I heard Gregor speaking, I thought magically I'd been transported back to the debate about his motion, and that he'd belatedly decided to accept the arguments that we were putting about the need for detailed financial scrutiny. But it seems not. It seems that only applies when opposition motions are put forward. But I think really that the kind of detailed scrutiny he's asking for in this case about costing seems to be totally inappropriate. As I understand it, Shirley is putting forward a proposal for the commencement of a process. This could be managed in a way to minimise costs of the council, can be done on the basis of replacing worn out bins with exactly what she's asking for. I really don't think this is going to be as costly as you're claiming. And I really do think if we're serious about wanting to deal with environmental crisis, we should be supporting this motion, not trying to find reasons not to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris.
Yes, I too wasn't planning to speak, but having listened to an exec member who presented some famous green bags with no figures that made any sense only a few months ago, it's the biggest load of hypocrisy I've heard in my life in this council chamber. This is a fairly minimal motion, and if you really had wanted to change it, you could have put an amendment in, and I would suggest that we could put an amendment in by replacing the word all litter bins by on a rotating basis as the bins wear out. And I actually propose that because I think that this is very sensible to replace our litter bins as they wear out. A lot of them are overfull. They do have recyclable items in. I walk past ones in Twyford quite regularly, which have aluminium cans in, which could very well go into a recycling one, but they're not there. There's just the bins that are collected. And I just think this is just the case, what I thought had gone from this council, of somebody producing something and therefore not wanting it. In other words, it's not invented here. And I think that is absolutely disgraceful. And you should be ashamed of yourself, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just clarity, you are not actually proposing an amendment because we don't have the time and you'd have to circulate it.
Well, I can't then.
Thank you. Councillor Jorgensen, you'll probably be the last person to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wasn't intending to speak on this motion, but it just reminded me, listening to this debate, that the cost of providing the bins is one thing, but I recall sitting in Frankfurt Airport watching the guys emptying the segregated litter bins in Frankfurt Airport, only to see them push both sides of the litter bin into one container and disappear off with it all mixed up. So the cost of actually putting the bins in, I suspect, is a lot more or a lot less than the cost of actually messing around with the collection so that we can segregate it properly. Certainly in Frankfurt Airport, when I washed it, they had all the sort of glitz around the split bins, but the collection really didn't work like that.
Thank you. I think we just have time for Councillor Boyd to respond, and then we will move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to say a couple of things. Councillor Bath sits, I believe, on the RE3 board. It's interesting to know that Reading Borough Council have these dual bins in the town centre. So perhaps it would be a piece of work to find out how much waste is actually recycled from them. They are extending them in other areas of their borough, so therefore they must see some worth in them. And it doesn't all, as we said before, it doesn't all have to be done at once, but I think it would be showing a good example to our residents, and a lot of our residents clearly want to recycle. I think it's a sensible motion, and I'm just sorry that it's not being considered on this occasion. And that's all I have to say, really.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. I can see our final crocodile, line of voters are waiting. Over to do the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Sam Akhtar.
Against.
Keith Baker.
Abstain.
Harry Bath.
Against.
Rachel Bishop. For. Laura Blumenthal.
Against.
Chris Bowring.
Against.
Shirley Boyd. For. Prue Bray. 4. Rachel Burgess. 4. Anne Chadwick. Stephen Conway.
4.
Phil Cunnington.
Against.
Peter Dennis.
4.
Carl Duran.
4.
Lindsay Ferris.
4.
Michael Firmager.
Against.
Paul Fishwick.
4.
Maria G.
4.
Guy Granderson.
Against.
John Halsall. David Hare.
4.
Pauline Kelly-Simon.
Against.
Graham Howe.
Against.
Clive Jones.
4.
Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Norman Jorgensen.
Again.
John Kaiser.
Against.
Sarah Kerr.
4.
Abdul Lloyd.
Against.
Murag Malvern.
4.
Charles Magetz.
Against.
Rebecca Magetz.
Against.
Adrian Mather.
4.
Andrew Mickleborough.
4.
Stuart Monroe.
Against.
Gregor Murray.
Against.
Barry Patman.
Against.
Jackie Rance.
Against.
Angus Roth.
Against.
Daniel Sargent.
Against.
Ian Shenton.
4.
Imogen Shepherd DeBay.
4.
Rochelle Shepherd DeBay.
4.
Caroline Smith.
4.
Chris Smith.
Against.
Wayne Smith.
Against.
Alison Swaddle.
Against.
Shahid Yunus.
Against.
Motion is gone.
I can announce that the motion has been lost and we've run out of time. Just before I formally close the meeting, can I thank each and every one of you, whether you're on Teams, whether you're in the David Hicks room, or whether you're in here, for making what's probably the most complicated process meeting that we've probably ever had. I just wonder what they're going to throw at me next time. But thank you. We couldn't have done it without your cooperation, and we've got far beyond in the agenda than I actually thought we might have. So thank you. each and every one of you. And I see Councillor Halson wants to make a thing.
Mr. Mayor, may I congratulate you on a really well-run meeting and your time management. You've done the impossible. Well done, sir.
So I declare the meeting over.